Welcome, everyone. We are on standby. We are waiting for our board members to arrive. As soon as they arrive, we will begin shortly. Please stand by. Good evening. Thank you again for joining us. We are waiting for all of our board members to arrive before we begin, so please stand by.
You're muted, Dr. Choi.
Okay, I've just checking on Julie Chanlin to make sure that she is joining, and I believe she is joining the Zoom meeting very shortly.
Thank you. Please let me know when to begin.
I believe our board member Julie Chanlin is joining us soon. I do see her in the panelist group now. And President Ryan, I believe we are ready to begin when you are.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. I'd like to first report out from closed session. It is my privilege to report that in closed session this evening, the Board of Education approved the employment of a Director of Special Education, ID number 164981, under item 3C, Public Employee. The employment will commence on May 1st, 2021. The motion was made by Mrs. Chong and seconded by Mrs. Ryan, and it was a unanimous vote. All right, I would like to open the regular session. This is a procedural item I'd like to call to order, and Dr. Choi, if you could please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Place your hand over your heart and please begin. I pledge allegiance,
Pledge allegiance
flag
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
for all. Thank you, Dr. Choi. All right, may I have a motion to approve the agenda? This is an action item.
This is Jane.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Barbary. The motion has passed. Approval of the, let's do
We have
roll
to-
call.
Roll call.
Okay. Mr. Chang, please.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mrs. Chanlin,
Aye.
thank you. Mr. Barbary,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. Student board member,
Aye.
thank you. All right, the motion has passed. Approval of agenda. Next, 6C, we have approval of minutes. It's an action item. This is for the special Board of Education meeting minutes for March 3rd, 2021.
I move to approve the minutes of the special board meeting on March 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. Barbary.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call vote, Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Barbary,
Aye.
Mrs. Chanlin,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. Student board member, Ms. Fahini Garamella.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is approval of minutes for March 9th, 2021, Board of Education meeting minutes.
I move to approve March 9, Board of Education meeting minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Mr. Barbary.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're looking for a second. There you
We
go.
need a second. I'm
Jane,
sorry.
second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chanlin.
No, that was Mrs. Chon.
Ms. Chong, thank you. I'm going to get this right, you guys. All right, so let's do roll call. We'll begin with Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Chanlin,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Barbary,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and student board member.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion has passed. Board approval of minutes. Here is the public comment section. This is 7. It's a procedural item. The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B. This is to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide public comment will have 2 options to submit public comments. Submit it through an online form. We did not receive any for tonight's meeting. And number 2, you may still request to speak during the meeting through question and answer and phone dial-in. Submit through an online form. Okay, that had already passed by 3:30 today. The public comments through question and answer during the meeting. Opportunities for the public comment are offered prior to closed session, at the start of the regular open session for items not on the agenda, and then prior to consent. Information and action items for matters on the agenda. The Board of Education reserves the right to add a public comment period prior to any individual item on the agenda. 5 minutes may be allotted to each speaker, maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. However, in the event there are more than 4 speakers on the same subject matter, the board president retains the discretion to adjust, limit the time allocated to each speaker to ensure that all wishing to speak will be heard within the 20-minute allotment. During public comment, the meeting will pause for 1 minute to take requests to speak. Raise your hand function is used to take requests during the public comment period. For online attendees, please press the raise hand icon to add yourself to the queue. And for phone attendees, dial *9. The speaking order will be determined based on the order of requests received, and individual speakers will be unmuted and then called upon to speak. The communication section from the audience regarding matters that are not on the agenda are now to be made at this time. This is an informational item. It's under 7A. Dr. Choi.
Thank you, President Ryan. We'll pause the meeting for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters that are not on the agenda. So again, we are pausing for 1 minute for matters that are not on the agenda. If you would like to speak, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. We have about 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to speak regarding matters not on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. Okay, President Ryan, we have 15 raised hands for matters that are not on the agenda.
Not on the agenda. All right. So we will have 1.5 minutes for each speaker.
Okay, great. Our first speaker is Lisa Davidson. Lisa Davidson, your line is now open.
Thank you. Thank you very much, school board. I'm here to talk about the academic program at San Marino High School. My math may not be perfect, but I want you to know my grammar is on my notes. Everything's in line there. Last year, we had several teachers who resigned or retired and were not replaced. And that, in addition to the reductions planned for this year, take the English department from 9 teachers to 5 for a 44% reduction. It takes the math department from 9.4 teachers to 4.8 for a 49% reduction in math teachers. It takes science from 8 teachers to 5.2 for a 35% reduction. It takes foreign languages from 6.4 to 2.8 teachers for a 56% reduction. San Marino High School has, I believe, 36 academic positions this year. 15 of the 23 RIF notices at the high school were for academic programs at San Marino High School.
30 seconds.
41% of the academic teachers at the high school have been noticed for cuts. The cuts to academic positions are not on par with declining enrollment numbers. And I would like to suggest that perhaps declining enrollment actually reflects declining academic rigor. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have Kimberly Johns. Kimberly Johns, your line is now open.
Thank you. Good evening. I've been an English teacher at the high school for almost 20 years, and in that time, I've seen how our district has maintained a reputation for excellence, and that's due in large part to our experienced faculty and strong programs. And I just want to remind the community present tonight that as teacher positions are cut, the effects will be widespread and will impact students in ways beyond large class sizes and eliminated course offerings. In my many years in the high school English department, we've held a tight standard for teaching a strong reading and writing curriculum, and it's teacher expertise and experience that have accounted for this strength. And the same can be said for all subjects. So as some teachers are forced to be shuffled around, taking on subjects they've never taught before due to job bumping, it's a clear fact that programs will be impacted. And this is not meant at all as a slight against any of our teachers who remain. It's just a logical conclusion that expertise in subject matter comes through experience. And when that's removed, programs will be affected. So please, let's just keep this ripple of effect of consequences in mind as we look at keeping our teachers and programs. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Amelia Kong. Amelia Kong, your line is now open.
Hello, I'm a senior at San Marino High School and president of the San Marino High School Science Team. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to speak today, and I'm here to represent the STEM teachers who are at risk of being laid off or not returning next year. We understand that ultimately the most important thing and really the only thing we can do to help our teachers is to raise money. And I wanted to make it aware that our club has been trying to raise as many efforts to help the effort to raise money as much as possible. We've already hosted a inter-club meeting with other club members, leaders of the San Marino High School, as well as a few leaders of the middle school science team to talk about the situation and ask them to help us reach out to their own club members. Currently, there is a widespread misunderstanding that the teacher cuts will only affect students in VAPA, and they therefore aren't concerned enough about saving the teachers to inform their parents about the situation or try to persuade their parents to donate.
30 seconds.
As the percentage of San Marino parents that are informed enough or care enough to donate is much smaller than it can be. We hope that by informing the student population about how the teacher cuts, especially the core teachers, will directly affect their education, they will start to tell their parents about the situation and personally ask their parents to donate for the sake of their education. We are planning on hosting meetings with parents of middle schoolers as well, because the teacher cuts will directly affect the middle schoolers the most. And Science Club is continuing to think of more ways to encourage parent donations and help the school raise as much money as possible. We hope that the district will recognize our devotion towards our science teachers and reflect our wishes to keep our teachers at San Marino for the next coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Letty Aranda. Letty, your line is open.
So I'd like to ask, will you please save us a seat? Will you please save us a seat? And I'm referring to the on-ramp of our teachers and our students who are joining us on Wednesday. Once again, our district and our board is moving faster than we need to move. We are so happy to have our students back, but we are in desperate need of doing things at a measured pace. When I came to San Marino, it was a sleepy little district. Lauren Kleinrock spent his lunch walking on the playground. Everyone at the district office had a job to do. Our foundation raised money, people donated, pictures were taken, and every year we funded a wonderful place. I don't recognize us anymore. I don't know what happened.
30 seconds.
We had a superintendent who spent an enormous amount of money and left us at the altar pregnant with debt. We have a superintendent now who is working as hard as he can to fix things as best he can. But we have to be concerned about who we are, and we need to go back to a board and a district that the community trusts and will support. Our teachers are the heart. Save us a seat. Please don't go so fast that we fall off. We depend on each other and the relationships we hold. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Randy Kai. Randy, your line is now open.
Hello, my name is Randy Kai, and I'm a junior at San Marino High School, as well as the captain of the high school science team. I just wanted to add on to what Amelia was saying today. So I just wanted to emphasize that the massive proposed layoffs for STEM teachers at San Marino High School will be extremely negative for San Marino's future academic reputation in terms of both academic activities, competitions, and opportunities, as well as core classes. So for example, the current proposed cuts will cut off our science team advisors at both San Marino High School and Huntington Middle School. Ms. Kaylin Dawn at San Marino High School and Ms. Wong at Huntington Middle School. They're both essential for our team's strong performances in the last few years. And those strong performances have set us apart from our neighboring public schools, as well as private schools like Flint Ridge Prep and Harvard Westlake. Additionally, moving to core classes, the cuts will leave only 2 teachers in the entire district with chemistry credentials, 1 in the high school and 1 in the middle school. And as you can imagine, 1 teacher handling an entire school's chemistry courses is logistically impossible. The chemistry classes are very popular. So I spoke with Ms. Chubbuck, the chemistry teacher that would remain at the high school recently, and she brought up that such a drastic increase in class size is also extremely unsafe for labs. It's standard for 4 students to remain at a lab table, and I'm not sure if you've seen the setups for San Marino classrooms, but 5 or 6 students at a lab table would obstruct the teacher's view, and they'd have to cut the number of labs they can safely do, and a dangerous environment will be created for all if labs are carried out with the drastically increased class sizes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Heather Floyd. Heather, your line is now open.
Good evening. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you I'm a teacher at Valentine Elementary. I teach 4th grade, and I've been so happy about having my kids back in the classroom. Returning to school has brought me a lot of joy. The teachers, we want to be back. The one thing that we also want is we want time to prepare, to make it the best that we can. The best way to ensure is to provide the information to the teachers before the community. On Friday night, I was at home looking through my email, and I received a message from San Marino Schools. It informed me as a parent that my child had the opportunity to return to school before I knew as a teacher. Knowing, for the teachers to know first, it allows us to be prepared for questions that come from parents. It allows us time to move around our room and make adjustments. And it allows us time to the opportunity to process how that's going to look in our classroom. We are a small district, and we are very service oriented. The teachers want the reopening to be successful, and we also want to be in the know. I'd like to request that for future openings, we are given more advanced notice of students coming back so that we can prepare appropriately. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Alyssa Quan. Alyssa, your line is now open.
Tonight. I coach the HMS Science Olympiad team and am a former student in the school district. I want to speak today about the importance of the science department at San Marino. Specifically, Ms. Wong was one of the most influential teachers on my academic career and personal development, and also one of the very best that I've had in the school district. Having worked with her for the past few years on the Science Olympiad team, it's safe to say that my job running the team would be much, much harder without her to organize everything and guide the students. And so for these reasons, and for those also listed by Amelia and Randy tonight, I strongly believe that science teachers should be high on the list of priorities if and when notices are rescinded. Thank you for your time and for listening.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Coach Wes. Coach Wes, your line is now, let's see here. Okay, I am trying to open the line for Coach Wes, and it says that your version of Zoom is an older version. I'm I'm going to promote you to a panelist so that you may speak. So give me a second. Hi, Coach Wes. You may now go ahead and begin your public comment.
Hi, my name is Wes Gonzalez, and I've worked for the San Marino Unified School District for 22 years, assisting Laura Pollard in what I believe and sincerely believe to be an outstanding PE program, a program that always goes above and beyond in every way. Together, Laura Pollard and I have worked extremely hard to build a PE program that I am very proud to have been a part of. We do our best to ensure the children have a safe yet fun environment, while at the same time making sure they have the support they need to be successful. We do not just teach these children games, sports, and skills. We also teach them how to live a healthier life. I am fortunate to be able to see this PE program from two different perspectives. First, as a teacher, watching our students grow and learn new skills. My favorite part is helping the students work through difficult tasks, and when they hit that achievement, seeing them, the excitement and the glow on their faces. The second perspective is as a parent's view. My daughter is a first grader at Valentine Elementary. On several occasions, she comes home telling my wife and I numerous facts that she's learned in PE, such as bones and muscles on the body. And she even knows the importance of making healthy food choices. She even cuts herself off from sugary treats every now and then. She also shares with us mindfulness tools and that she's learned in the PE program, meditation and deep breathing and yoga. I believe our children need and benefit greatly from this program. It helps to ensure that they maintain a healthy lifestyle now and for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Casey Anderson. Casey, your line is now open. Casey, your line is open, but I show that you are on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, we hear you perfectly. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Valentine, and I wanted to speak tonight about the importance of keeping teachers informed about district decision-making. Teachers received notification about the on-ramp after the survey was distributed to parents in the community. This led to teachers receiving confusing emails from parents who were asking about holding spots or if their students would need to switch teachers upon returning. Some parents felt rushed as they had to juggle schedules to accommodate a quick return, and many teachers felt rushed to get their rooms set up safely to accommodate more students. I understand that funding drives a lot of these deadlines and decisions, but open communication is crucial so that everyone feels valued, prepared, and safe. When communication gets lost, it becomes hard to work as a team.
30 seconds.
Additional students means moving furniture, preparing supplies and dividers, and addressing parent concerns. For future on-ramps, please keep parents and teachers informed so that we can also be prepared. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we have Tammy. Tammy, your line is now open. Tammy, I unfortunately only see a first name. You are currently on mute, but your line is open.
Is my line open now?
It is now open. We
Thank
hear
you.
you.
Hi.
Go ahead.
This is Tammy Garcia, and I'm a special education teacher at the high school for the last 12 years. I've been in the field of special education for the last 40 years. So with great experience, I would like to express my concern for all of us in special education about the concerns we have as to the effect that the severe reduction of force will have on the teacher's ability due to increased class sizes to spend quality time teaching, reteaching, and clarifying content for all students, particularly our students with special needs. who often rely on this level of support for success in their general education classes. The other concern is the potential loss of options in electives for our population to participate in, as these are often the classes our students enter in terms of inclusive activities.
30 seconds.
And continue with their inclusive activities with their peers and establish relationships with their peers. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Laura Pollard. Hi, Laura, your line is now open.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Laura Pollard, and I'm truly thankful to be in my 29th year of teaching physical education at Valentine. I'd like to take this opportunity to advocate for our students regarding their PE programs. Our PE programs teach our students health and skill-related fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, safety, health, sportsmanship, anatomy, physiology, and character education. Physical education is a necessary academic subject that demands the same rigor as the other subjects. It is the only academic subject that teaches our students in all three domains: physical, affective, and cognitive. PE provides students with a sequential K-12 standards-based curriculum. First grade has 61 standards, by the way, designed to develop physically literate students. Physical literacy is the ability to move with competence and confidence in a wide variety of physical activities in multiple environments that benefit the healthy development of the whole person. Our students are returning to school after suffering trauma from a worldwide pandemic, and they need to move their bodies and learn how to cope and manage their stress in healthy ways, such as exercise, mindfulness, socialization, and healthy nutrition. They are learning this in physical education. We cannot take this class away from them. We cannot take away their opportunity to learn these life skills. We have a responsibility to educate our students in how to lead a healthy life now and in the future. We must reinstate our students' physical education programs. Their overall wellness is at stake. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next, we have Senora Kobos. Senora Kobos, your line is now open.
Can you hear me?
We hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm the World Language Department Chair at the high school, and as my colleagues stated before, Mrs. Davidson and Mrs. Johns, these detrimental cuts are going to affect the quality of our education. Currently, with the proposed cuts, we would cut the Spanish department from 4 teachers down to 2, and class sizes are going to be tremendous. Also is the cut of the Japanese program, which is an essential part of our department and a successful part of the department as well. We would like to ask that the board consider the grant that's being offered by the Japan Foundation to pay for the cost of a teacher, and we would like to ask you to please consider applying for the grant. The deadline is in April, and we would really like to save our Japanese program, not just for the teacher, but for the many students that are in the program and that want to continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Cassandra Young. Cassandra, your line is now open.
Hello, my name is Cassandra Young, and I'm a junior at San Marino High and Publicity and HMS Liaison for the Science Club. I would like to add on to Randy, Amelia, and Elisa's points in advocating for the STEM teachers in our district. One of San Marino School District's most defining traits is the rigorous and challenging academic classes at every school level. Not only would removing science teachers decrease the quality and safety of classes, but the competitiveness of honors and AP classes would decrease. Fewer teachers would result in fewer classes, which would mean less students would be able to take STEM classes. These classes tend to be extremely popular as many students want to pursue a career in STEM. As the number of AP classes decrease, so does the number of high-performing students at the school. In order to maintain the same level of academic rigor and stay a high-performing school, we must keep the STEM teachers we currently have. Schools such as La Cañada, which have recently passed their own parcel tax, have been able to increase their staff size, and if we continue to reduce the amount of teachers able to
30
instruct
seconds.
students, how would we be able to continue to reach the same level of performance we have previously? As a distinguished and high-ranking school in our region, we should uphold the same standard, not lower ourselves, if we wish to continue to be recognized as a prominent and academically challenging school. As of now, we have relatively few AP classes, and decreasing the amount of AP classes available would prove to be an academic loss for students and the school. Thank you for listening.
Okay, next we have Elizabeth Drake. Elizabeth, your line is now open.
Hey there. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, my name is Elizabeth Drake. I'm an English teacher at the middle school. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you. I'm an English teacher at the middle school. I've been in San Marino for over 20 years, and I have taught for over 30. I'd like to address two items on the recent RIF notices. The first has to do with the VAPA program. When I first came to Huntington and San Marino, I noticed that the VAPA program was not anything near what we have now. It has grown tremendously, and those of you who have been around a long time know what I'm talking about. There is not a single competition that our teachers and our coaches do not come back with awards and stellar accolades. And that kind of thing does not happen without great teaching. I find it amazing when I'm listening in the auditorium to our middle school students playing their band in the band or the orchestra. I pinch myself because I cannot believe that they're middle school students.
30 seconds.
I've been to other middle schools and they have not had that type of skill. So what a shame it is that we are making such huge cuts in the VAPA program. The other point I wanted to mention was the cut in the PE department across all grade levels. As a child, PE was my favorite subject. And with students on computers so much, being digital natives, they need to get outside. I don't know anyone who wouldn't say, yeah, kids need to be outside. They need to get some fresh air. They need to learn some sports skills, the sharing. And I'd like to echo everything that the PE teachers have already said. So such a shame that we won't have those bragging rights, that children won't be able to go in and take these wonderful PE classes or these world-class VAPA classes. That's it. Thank you for giving me a time to speak.
Thank you. And last, we have Mrs. Bowen. Mrs. Bowen, your line is now open.
Thank you. I'm Rebecca Boet. I teach third grade at Carver Elementary. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Along with all the challenges we faced with opening our school this trimester, I have found as an instructor, the biggest challenge of all has been dealing with the direct lack of communication among the superintendent, principal, and our staff. I'd like to give two major examples of such. First, on Monday, March 1st, I was told I would have to report to school that following Friday to prepare for in-student instruction. This gave the grade 3 through 5 teachers 3 days to figure out our own childcare needs, as well as how we would address the needs of our returning students. Second, parents, not our principal or union, informed us that they were given a survey on Friday evening, allowing them to join the on-ramp, which is happening tomorrow. This shows a definite lack of transparency and collaboration. I would like to see the district work with the SMTA and its staff so that we can be a stronger team, fielding parent questions appropriately and being well prepared for the happy return of students. Please inform your staff well in advance, not just 2 days before future on-ramps occur, so that we can be well prepared to provide the best instruction we can. Thank you.
Okay, President Ryan, that concludes the 15 that had requested to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Choi, and thank you for all the speakers who brought comments to the Board of Education. Next, we have communication from the audience regarding matters on the consent agenda, correct?
It looks like we had a few more hands raised. Did you see that, Stephen?
Yeah, when we have our open period to request to speak, we had 15 raised hands. And we had the 15 that raised their hands during that comment period to speak. So unfortunately, we can't prevent others from raising their hands after that 1 minute pause. If that makes sense.
I remember in the last meeting, we voted to let everyone speak. Is that an option to do again?
I think that's something for the board to decide, if that's something that you would like to keep on a rolling basis in terms of allowing folks to do public comments.
Though that was for matters not on the agenda. I would propose that we've got a lot of information to cover. Do we want to go on with 7B, or are you making a motion, Mrs. Chanlin? Or do you want to discuss?
Well, I have no idea what they wanted to mention, but we have 204 people here. And I think that if people want to speak to us and in this session, I think that we should respect their right to do that.
I think I totally respect the people that like to speak, but this Board of Education meeting, we need to follow the rule. So, and also I think all the audience need to understand and trying to familiar with the format, how we solicit for the public comment. So if anyone they just come in and they don't know in the beginning, and then they just raise the hand, end up, all the meeting until the 11:30, I think this is not acceptable. I'm sorry to say that, So just keep going to the 7B.
Okay, Mrs. Chanlin, would that be all right with you, or was that a motion? I'm still not clear. I know you made a comment.
I would like to make the motion that if people are here and want to speak, we should respect their right to speak.
And how many were we talking about, Dr. Choi? I wasn't really clear.
I believe there were 2 additional hands that were raised within the last 20 minutes that we did public comments.
Okay.
We've now lost them, though, right, Stephen?
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Barbary. Are you wanting to make a motion, or you want to move on?
I'm not making a motion. I was just making the point we've lost the people that had raised their hands.
May I make an amended motion for the sake of moving on right now, that for the rest of the meeting, that we stick with the 1 minute comments, and if at the end of the meeting, after we've gone through all of our business, with which there is considerable tonight, then if there is time, we can discuss opening the meeting for comment again. I am concerned about not receiving comments from people, but I am very concerned about getting through this agenda tonight. It is very important, and a lot of people are tuning in for very specific items. So I'm just concerned that if we continue to do this, we're going to spend a lot of time talking and continuing to open the floor.
Thank you. So, Mrs. Chanlin, I'm going to move to 7B because there was not a second motion for that.
Okay.
Thank you. 7B is communications from the audience regarding matters that are on the consent agenda, and they are to be made at this time. Dr. Choi.
Thank you, President Ryan. We'll pause the meeting for 1 minute to take requests to speak on matters in the consent section. If you would like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. We have 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to request to speak on matters in the consent section, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. Okay, President Ryan, we have one request to speak. Susie Lee, your line is now open.
Hi, this is Eric Lee, and I just wanted to chat with respect to the funding. First and foremost, just several ideas, and this is really more of a Plan B type. But one, and others have considered this, tapping into the 4.6 million COVID relief money. Just an idea.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is for the matters that are on the agenda.
This is for matters in the consent section.
Oh, consent section, sorry.
Got it. May I continue?
Is your public comment in regards to?
This is Dr. Wilson. We're going to have that item a little later in the agenda. We'd love
Got
you to come back at that point.
Got it. Okay, my apologies.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr.
Okay,
Choi, was that for 7B? That concludes it?
That concludes it.
Thank you. We are now on the consent section. This is consent section for the agenda 8A to 8F. Do I have a motion?
I have a question. TBWBH props and measures consulting services for $12,000. How?
Hold on, point of order. Do we need to do a motion first before we discuss?
Are you asking to discuss, or you're pulling it from the consent agenda?
I would like clarification on what those consulting services are for and how we decided on that.
Would you prefer to discuss it, or would you prefer to pull it and discuss it?
Actually, just a point of order. There should be a motion, and then that discussion happens, and then it can be pulled if it's so chosen by the board.
Okay, so let me, to move it along, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Thank you, Mr. Barbary. I would
Now
like
time for
to,
discussion.
now we have discussion, but I also want to make sure that it's clear. So we are not pulling it. This is just for discussion, right?
I think we talk about it and then discuss whether or not we pull.
All right.
So my question is, how and why did we decide to use TBWBH consulting services?
So TBWB has worked with our district on financial strategy, and we are proposing to hire them for a limited contract to help guide us with the discussion that we're going to have tonight, the direction we're going. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a not to exceed.
I was going to say it's a not to exceed, and so it's just based on our usage, and this is just putting a cap on what we could spend with TDWB without coming back to the board.
That's correct.
And also I wanted to clarify, there was an opportunity for these questions to be addressed, right? If there was a concern. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So again, so just to clarify, so this is in regards to getting consulting services regarding finances or regarding another parcel tax?
I would say yes to both of those, Mrs. Chanlin. It's a limited 2-month contract. We recognize, as you'll see in my report later on, that we're at the kind of the brink of a funding cliff here. And this is a firm that we have great confidence in to help guide us and navigate us through that. So it's a limited contract. It's not an ongoing contract.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I've already had the motion. Do I do roll call?
Yes.
All right. Mrs. Chong?
Aye.
Mr. Chang?
Aye.
Mrs. Chanlin?
No.
Mr. Barbary?
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan? Aye. Miss Bahini Garamella?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. 9, communication section, procedural item, communication from the Board of Education. Let's begin with Mr. Chang.
Thank you. Board President always give me the first hand to talk. First of all, I want to remind the teacher and staff, you are second shot in the coming Friday, Saturday. Don't give up your right, because today I heard from other organizations, they're still waiting. So before we open the secondary, I think we like everyone get a shot, including our board education. Secondly, I want to appreciate Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce. Last week, they donate 25,000 masks to our school district. So mean we can save some money to address to other PPE. And then I was touched the last Friday night because it's been for a long time. I haven't been back to the San Marino High School Titan Shield since the last March. I can kiss the land if I can, but then they may have a virus. Anyway, I'm happy. Eventually, we have a very happy ending. Cheerleader, football player, all can work together. Thank you. I think this a tribute to our principal and all the staff. Thank you so much. And also, they are very strict. When I try to come in, they asked me to do the inquiry. So I had to answer a lot of questions. I said I already get a second shot, and I know the public health. They say no. You have to. We have to make sure you are on the computer list. Otherwise, you cannot get in. Thank you so much. So I'm trying to test them whether they are the income price. Lastly,
thank you, Mr. Chang.
Lastly, thank you for Dr. Wilson during the short time, and we can come out a statement related to the anti-Asian issue. I know the last year we already have a resolution applying to all the ethnic group for the inclusion equity issue, but this time, especially this week, is critical. So we send a message out. I think it is absolutely right. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Mrs. Chanlin, please.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm so sad I wasn't able to be at the football game, but I loved seeing that the cheerleaders were on ABC 7. I was a Titan cheerleader, and it just warms my heart that they get to be back out there. And so thanks to everyone who just made that happen and made it happen safely. And thank you to everyone in the community who has reached out to me to let me know their sentiments about all kinds of things that are going on. And we value all of your opinions and all of the students, of course, and everyone's doing their best to just get everyone back to school. And thank you to all the teachers. I know you're working so hard, and I know that my 5th grade student is so grateful. I continue to work with CSBA, that's the California School Boards Association, regarding governance practices. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Chanlin. Mr. Barbary, please.
So I too, I think it's great that we're starting to do some of these more social activities in a safe way. So it's great to have a football game, and I've heard a little rumor that maybe the band is going to be allowed back. Not necessarily we're ready yet. I know I haven't talked to the district about that, but I think the rules are changing that we may even get a band back out on the field at some point in the near future. So that'd be wonderful. I'm a band kid from way back, and so I'd love to see them back on the field, as well as the cheerleaders and the football team. That was so great. I watched the live stream and heard Mitch and Steve do the play-by-play, and it was quite entertaining, the two of them. So the thing I'd like to add is, of course, we've heard a lot from the community over the past couple of weeks about different programs that they're supportive of, and different teachers, and it's so great to hear the community come out so loudly and support so widely across different aspects. We've heard a couple here calling tonight, but we've received so many emails, and I've heard from so many other community members. And there's definitely a great fundraising effort that's been started. And so I encourage you all to listen, and if you feel led, please give to that. But there's definitely some people that are interested in giving to specific programs. And that, of course, comes with some difficulties. So I of course, would love for everybody to give to the general fund so that the district can really put the funds to what it feels are the most effective places. We've heard a lot of arguments for different things, and we'd love to be able to have that flexibility to spend it how we'd like, or the district would like to spend it how they like. But for those that do want to give to a specific program, I think that those people need to understand that if they wanted to give to a specific program, and I'm not making any promises, obviously, but you would have to fundraise for the full amount of the position, because otherwise it wouldn't give the district the flexibility. If you only raise for half of the money, then we'd have to make decisions to cut elsewhere. So I would encourage you to make sure you understand that. And if you do, if you are able to fully fundraise for a position, I would like to ask my fellow board members that we support the community in that effort. There obviously are people who are more led to give to the specific things that they feel their students or that they've maybe benefited from in the past. I'd like to have the administration help support that wherever we can. But I do feel that we as a board should respect that desire if that's the way people want to give, and commit to spending the money accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barbary. Mrs. Chung, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to start off, first of all, acknowledging all of the anti-Asian hate crimes and the events that took place in Colorado. Just acknowledge the pain and let everybody know that we stand with and stand up for the victims and for the communities that have been affected. Over the last couple of weeks, I sat down and I looked at all of the communications I received from the community and drew up a little spreadsheet of it. And I received about 100 emails, texts, phone calls, reaching out about the loss of specific teachers, programs, core subject areas and activities that are affected. I received a lot of communications about a desire to see a new parcel tax that would support high quality teaching and activities and small class sizes, and a variety of athletics and activities in our schools. And to bring a parcel tax back that looked different in some ways than the last one, but not so different in that it still maintained the level of support we needed. And I also heard a lot of information from people about wanting to find ways to use one-time fundraising to retain our teachers. I think there is an understanding that this is not a sustainable plan of action for ongoing years, but it would be something that we would do for this year in the gap until we are able to be successful with a new parcel tax. I heard a lot of communications that Mr. Barbary referred to in terms of direct gifts, and I will point out and simply leave it at that there is a level for the San Marino Schools Foundation at the centennial level of $115,000 to fund a teaching position. And I'm going to simply just state that fact, and everybody think about what that means for you and what your priorities are, knowing that everything has been cut, from core to counseling to activities and athletics and So it's a really big lift that we're only going to be able to accomplish together. I also engaged in some legislative and legislative and training activities with CSBA, which is the California School Boards Association. I engaged in a governance training a couple weeks ago, and I'm in the middle of our student learning and achievement training this week. And it's been really good for me to help me make that transition from a parent and community member to a board member to a governance member. And ultimately comes down to knowing that my role as a board member that we as a board, our priorities are always to look at the what and the why of what we were doing, to focus on our goals and our progress, and then to direct our staff to implement proper action plans. And so they are the ones responsible for the how and the when, and we in a cycle hold them accountable to that. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with the community about the values and priorities and goals that drive the how and the what and the why for all of us. I also engaged in some legislative action week meetings. I met with Assemblymember Chow and Senator Portantino with many other California school board and school leaders. And we advocated for more local control of decision-making, more broadband access, COVID-19 liability protection for schools, and really focusing a lot on more funding for our schools to pay down our deferrals that are owed to us, to increase the COLA for critical non-LCFF programs, and for pension relief. And so as a collaborative effort, everybody joined together in that this week to address all of those concerns with our legislators. And lastly, I wanted to say thank you to SMTA. They continue to go above and beyond to serve our students, even during everything that's happening. I recognize that morale has been difficult, and I'm grateful for everybody's efforts to press on. And I know that having gone through kindergarten to second and third to fourth, that it's going to be a tense week as we look to reopen the high school. There's still a lot of questions because everything keeps changing. And I want to encourage everybody to be vigilant as we look to just staying safe in our schools. The only way we do this is if everybody really abides by the rules and the mitigation strategies put in place. And I want to encourage the teachers and staff that there is a lot of outpouring from the community to find the monies to restore our teachers. And that is a testament to the legacy that this city has built, and for which we are all committed to continue.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. So one of the things that I want to talk about is first to thank our teachers. Many of our board members have commented on teachers going above and beyond, but this is a challenging time for everyone, but in particular for teachers. Teachers are in the front line. Teachers are working with students and family. And so we need to make a better effort in terms of really listening to each other. And so thank you to the teachers, one and all. Thank you for having the faith in our district, for what you do for our kids on a daily basis. And we will continue to exhaust all of our resources to continue to look at our numbers and to continue to maintain the programs and services and the personnel that we need. I want to give a shout out to our parents from PTA. Our parent parties attended both Valentine and Carver's. What a fun evening with magic, as well as with comedy from the two sites, and parents just working hard and raising money for the specific sites. It was a wonderful evening attending the football game. It was almost surreal because part of the band was there, our cheerleaders were there, our football players were there, Mitch was there with Steve Talt. But it's not going to be the same until everyone is able to return safely. So I encourage everyone to stay safe. I know spring break is coming up, so please stay safe. Get your second COVID shots, as Mr. Chang reminded us. And this week, we were reminded of how blessed we are to live in this community with what's happening, what happened in Atlanta, and with various communities that have been struck pretty hard in the Bay Area. Over 2,000 cases of anti-Asian crimes and harassment. And so, Dr. Wilson, thank you so much for your work on sending that message out, gathering the resources for everyone. And again, thank you to our teachers and to our administrative staff for what you do for us. It's an incredible lift that you've had to do to open up the schools. It's almost as if we need to restart again and then restart again with the next level and restart again. And so with every time we are learning from it, this is a first for all of us. So community members, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for your heartfelt letters. Thank you for your encouragement. And again, we look to have you continue to support the programs that we have and the students in our schools. Thank you. And with that, I believe it is our superintendent and then our student board member.
Thank you, Board President Ryan, Board of Education, executive team, student board member Bahini. So I'd like to read something I prepared for tonight. The recent mass shootings in Georgia and Colorado are heartbreaking and are surely raising fears about safety, especially as we begin to reopen schools and other businesses in our communities. You know, and as we begin to gather together in groups like our football game Friday. You know, first, our hearts go out to the families and the friends of the fallen in both Atlanta and Boulder, folks whose lives will be forever impacted in very direct and profoundly negative ways. I really was overcome with emotion as I watched the parade of squad cars and fire trucks slowly winding its way through Boulder, trailing the ambulance carrying the body of the fallen officer Eric Talley, who thought he would be going home to his family after his shift. I want to assure you that we are committed to the safety of our schools, our students and staff, and will continue to take measures to ensure that our reopening efforts deeply consider the safety and the security of our students and staff, in addition to following the state and local health guidelines. The increase in violence and discrimination targeting people in our AAPI community is an important reminder of the continued work needed to make our community a safe and inclusive place for all people. We know events like these can impact the physical and mental well-being of our students, staff, and families. So we encourage you to connect with your friends and your family and support each other and seek help as it is needed. San Marino Unified is committed to supporting the physical and mental well-being of our students, staff, and families. Whatever you or your family are experiencing, we want you to know that you're not alone. And that support is available at school and in our community. And, you know, just outside of reading the statement I prepared, I would tell you that I had a wonderful opportunity to sit down with the chief and Contro shortly after the shootings. And I know that's weighing very heavily on both the city and the school district's minds. And, you know, one of the things we decided together was to really work very closely in addressing these issues in very real and applicable ways, and including our student voice in that. And so I look forward to that continued work in partnership with the city of San Marino. So I just want to say how wonderful it was to see our 3rd through 5th graders return to school on March 10th. And now we're looking forward to our middle and high school students returning on April 1st. I want to absolutely thank our teachers for the amazing work that they're doing to make that happen. And Mrs. Ryan is right, they're on the front lines. And we certainly appreciate you, and we will try harder and harder, even though oftentimes the guidance changes by the day or even by the hour, to engage our teachers in meaningful conversations. The football game on Friday night has been noted. It was amazing. What a lift. I mean, I turned a corner and saw the lights over the field, and my spirits just lifted immediately. To see the cheerleaders, the drum corps, the team come out. It was a really strange ambiance on Friday. It was like Friday Night Lights in March, but with the dew level and the lights, it actually felt like fall out there. It was just kind of a bizarre situation. It's great to see board members out there and my entire executive team there to support. I spoke with the administrators from Burroughs High School who were standing across the way, and they felt so respected by the tone that was set. They felt so welcomed by our community. The cheer squad was absolutely awesome. They were right on point. And I got to tell you, I was not expecting our team to play with the precision and guts that they played with. I mean, Burroughs comes from a league that plays very large schools. We could have easily been crushed, but those guys played to the very last snap, and it was a very respectable game. So it was just a really neat night to be out there. So with that, I'll turn it over to our student board member.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So I just want to start off with an ASB update. So from March 8th to March 12th, San Marino High School's ASB and Temple City High School's ASB organized a virtual school versus school family feud type competition. It got a lot of positive feedback, and I think it was an amazing way to get student engagement. Also, from March 18th to the 22nd, as was mentioned earlier, the high school resumed athletic competitions like football and girls tennis, and cheer came back as well, and I'm sure there are many more to come. And lastly, regarding the high school's reopening, I know many of my peers were taken aback by the short time frame they were given to make a decision that did subsequently impact their decisions negatively. So I hope those who did decide to go back are given more clarity about the logistics of returning before April 1st. I also do know that Mr. Kurtenbach and Mr. Casson-Clare are doing the best they can with communicating the plan to SMHS students, and I want to sincerely thank them for that.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Wilson and Ms. Garamella. Up next, we have communication from the audience regarding matters on the information agenda, which are to be made at this time.
Okay, thank you, President Ryan. We'll pause the meeting for 1 minute to take requests regarding information items on the agenda. If you would like to speak regarding the information items, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. We have 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to speak regarding information items on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon or dial *9. Okay, President Ryan, we have 5 requests to speak. May we go ahead and begin with the 5?
So with 5 members and 20 minutes, we will have 4 minutes per speaker, please, Dr. Choi.
Okay, so first is Leslie Young. Leslie, your line is now open. Leslie, your line is now open. Would you like to submit your public comment?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Leslie Chung, and I'm speaking as a parent from Carver Elementary. My husband grew up in San Marino schools, and we moved here for the small class sizes. My husband is back in his hometown because he got a great education and had great experiences. I fear that if the class sizes are not kept small, then we will be forced to look into other schools. My son is in 1st grade and my daughter is in 5th, and she has had 2 of the teachers who have been given the pink slips. We love those teachers and her experiences in these classrooms. We do not want to be forced to leave the community, but a failure to plan for the unexpected has put parents as well as teachers in an impossible situation. So I'm asking you as the board that I have personally voted for to please find a way to advise the district. The resolution must include reinstating and not just skipping. I will donate during this time as well, but please find other ways to cut costs, including looking into administration pay cuts or leasing out extra property. Please help lead the community and manage the district as leaders who represent us as the parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Letty Aranda. Letty, your line is now open.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to, I know that Dr. Wilson is going to talk about plans regarding funding and plans that the district has. I just wanted to reiterate, because I have heard the phrase, laying off the teachers was the plan B. I want to say one more time that laying off the teachers should never be a plan B. Laying off the teachers was a consequence of not having a plan B. It's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter now. It does not matter. I know Dr. Wilson and the board will work towards and are working towards doing incredible things, because that's what we are. That's what we do. But once again, I want to speak to the idea of saving us a seat and embracing who we are. We are still a little district, and we relied on each other because we trusted. Lauren Kleinrock sat with Linda Tognazini, the former SMTA president, and they had their little meetings and things moved along. Everyone did what they needed to do. We weren't concerned over $17 million gyms. We weren't concerned about a lot of things. We need to heal and come together. So please, let's not say that laying off the teachers is the plan B. Our community knows that. We all know that. So I would love for it, for people to know that it didn't turn out the way we hoped, the way we planned, but we are together moving forward. I have the most respect for the people that we work with and we work for. And I would just love for the teachers, especially now with morale being low and layoffs in store and bumping rights and seasoned teachers having to ask for letters of recommendation. Teachers saying, I remember that child. We hope the parents and the board and the DO will embrace and hold our hand as we try to move forward. But please, no more laying off the teachers was plan B. We love you. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Kaylin Dwan. Kaylin, your line is now open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Kaylin Dwan, and I wanted to address 11D. I'm a science teacher at the high school who was cut. The massive number of layoffs has implications beyond the classroom, which is what 11D mostly talks about, I believe. I'm the coach for a science team and biology Olympiad, two extracurricular programs that are important to many students at San Marino High School, some of whom have already spoken eloquently on this topic. It is difficult to see how these programs will continue in light of the layoffs, as I know that my colleagues who will remain in the science department will be extremely overworked due to the 30% increase in class sizes that they are about to experience. Even if they wanted to assume the responsibility for these programs, it may not be possible given that the amount of free time they will have will be extremely reduced by the increase in their workloads. What may happen to science team is going to be a common occurrence to multiple extracurriculars if the district is not able to reverse the cuts. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Marguerite Lindsay. Marguerite, your line is now open.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Wilson, Cabinet, President Ryan, and Board. I'm Marguerite Lindsay. I'm speaking tonight as a SMUSD resident and taxpayer. The time is now. Crush the box. I advocate using the COVID relief monies, the one-time COVID relief monies to rescind layoffs. I support the foundation getting creative with any of their net assets for rescinding teacher layoffs. Let's crush the box now. The time is now. Thank you.
Okay, and then last we have, I know it shows Susie Lee, but I know it's Mr. Lee. So Mr. Lee, your line is now open.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. That was Susie Lee that called in earlier. Hi, this is Eric Lee. I'm a Carver parent. I have 4 ideas that I would like to propose in hopes of protecting our teachers. First, Marguerite had just mentioned, but can we tap the $4.6 million COVID relief money as stopgap funding? I understand that the relief money needs to be used for COVID. However, if Temple City Unified can collect COVID relief money by reopening schools for students and teachers to voluntarily return to campus for socialization purposes, I'm sure we can come up with creative ideas for our teachers with respect to COVID relief. The EdSource article that I had researched states districts must use the money on COVID-related learning and school reopening expenses, but will have wide discretion. So how much of this COVID relief money can we use to stopgap and fund our teachers? The second idea that I propose is the June 2020 audited financials disclosed that there is $3.95 million in net assets without donor restrictions and $1.4 million in donor restricted assets. Can any of this money be used as a stopgap to keep the teachers while we use the time to pass another parcel tax in August? Presuming the $4.1 million from Measure E that was lost is an annualized amount, then 4 months or between May and August would be closer to a $1 million stopgap. The third idea that I propose is, I understand that the foundation may not want to use the entire $3.5 million surplus. As an added motivation for others to donate, what if the foundation said they would use part of the $3.95 million and match dollar for dollar any new donations made to the foundation for purposes of stopgap funding? I believe parents would be more inclined to donate to the foundation. This would help make our fundraising goals much more attainable, and if there was any excess surplus, the funds could go back to the foundation. The fourth idea that I propose is I'm making an assumption that the property and parcel tax that was paid in 2021 is related to the 2021-2022 school year. If that is the case, and we are able to pass Measure E in August, I do not believe we would have lost any partial tax money, as the 2022 partial tax has not been assessed yet. The problem that the failed Measure E presents is related to the proposed budget that is due at the end of June 2021. For budgeting purposes, can we use the foundation's $3.95 million in net assets and potentially the additional $1.4 million in net assets with donor restrictions to temporarily replace Measure E? Assuming Measure E passes in August, we can avoid using the foundation's assets and instead use the Measure E funds without skipping a beat. I understand that there is a risk if the August Measure E fails, but if the foundation money was purposed for a rainy day, it's currently a torrential downpour outside. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comments.
Thank you, Dr. Choi, and thank you to all the speakers who called in. The board and I want to thank you for your ongoing participation and engagement, and your thoughts are always valued. Next up, we have 11A. This is an information item, and we have Dr. Jeff Wilson to present the district strategic financial recovery plan for 2021 to 2023. This is an informational item only. Dr. Wilson.
Sorry about that. I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight once again. It's a really, really important night. I want to start by saying that this is a starting point, and I really want you to know that our team is working day and night without rest to continue this journey. And there's a lot of moving pieces to it. So tonight I'd like to just sort of take the board through a quick summary of where we are, how we got here, and then where we're going, some ideas there, and ask for the board's guidance on a couple of items. So we'll just jump in right away. Go ahead, Dr. Choi. So first of all, statement of the problem, the current fiscal crisis. As many of you know, SMUSD is significantly underfunded from the state and federal sources compared to districts like us, and we'll show you some data a little bit later on. We are heavily, heavily dependent on local revenue sources. I believe right now approximately 50% of our staff is funded through local revenue sources. Like most of the state, we're experiencing significant declining enrollment, which ties to a loss of revenues. We do not qualify for much grant funding or qualify really for minimal support, because most of the grants in the state of California are oriented around your unduplicated pupil count, from which we have very low numbers. Our taxpayers are burdened with a progressive tax structure in the state that penalizes success. And our country is immersed in a political climate of distrust for government. Move on, Dr. Choi. So let's take a look at our expenses, mandates, and encumbrances. We suffer with exponential increases in employee benefits and pension mandates, not of any teachers or staff members' fault. This is a statewide problem. We are experiencing significantly greater expenses associated with special education, attributed to rising identifications of autism and spectrum disorders, an increase in advocacy for individualized services, and an increased propensity to litigate individualized services. Folks today are much more apt to contact outside advocates and legal help to get services. We are way down with significant facilities needs and deferred maintenance, really with no funding source to address those needs. We have a community who expects a varied and deep educational program, and that's what we want to deliver, combined with small class sizes at a private school feel. Prior to 2019, staffing levels were not adjusted to reflect a decline in enrollment, causing reserves to be depleted. And then prior to the failure of Measure E, SMUSD was projecting a positive variance in the ending fund balance, as referenced by Eric a few moments ago, due to effective expenditure reduction programs. I just want to pause there for a minute and make sure everybody understands that this layoff this year is a totally different situation than last year. When we faced that cliff last year, we were looking at being highly overstaffed. This is about a funding cliff created by the defeat of a renewal of a parcel tax that had been in place for years. So it's very different. Prior to that failure, we had the district for the first time in many, many years in the black. So, you know, at the end of this whole thing, right, if we can fix that as a community, right, we're going to be back on track because we do have that budget under control at this point. Thanks, Dr. Choi. As far as our local revenue issues, due to many homes being passed down through trusts, resulting in low levels of assessed valuation, SMUSD does not qualify for basic aid status. And just a real quick explanation of what that means. There's only 2 basic aid districts in Southern California, in LA County, I should say. That would be Beverly Hills and Santa Monica. There's several in Orange County, like Laguna Beach. There's many basic aid districts in Northern California. Essentially, basic aid is this. If the state funding formula for your district is exceeded by your local revenues raised to support that, you get to keep all the excess. And I'm going to show you what that means for districts who are basic aid and why if we had updated valuation, we'd be in a totally different place. We are likely the most dependent school district in the state of California on local revenue streams. We have relied on 2 parcel taxes, the steady and historical support of the San Marino Schools Foundation, and significant PTA fundraising to support programs that other districts cannot afford. San Marino Schools Foundation has found it increasingly difficult to reach the annual fundraising goal of $2 million, jeopardizing future programs funded by the foundation. And then with the failure of Measure E, SMUSD faces that immediate $4.1 million funding cliff, necessitating a requisite reduction in expenditures offset partially by any future fundraising efforts. And I want to pause here just for a moment. Never have I referred to laying off teachers as a plan B. Never came out of my mouth. I've heard of it tonight. What I will tell you is without reserves and with a structural deficit built in, the only way to address, the major way to address that issue, because 85 to 90% of districts' expenditures are, people, salaries, pensions, benefits. It's terrible. It's an awful thing. There's no plan B. But the bottom line is we must, and this is the last point, we must develop steady and reliable local funding streams to remain viable in California. So let's jump into some information really quick. What I've done is I've run analytics on the 14 school districts I believe that we are most like in the state of California based on the size, the type of students we have, the wealth of the community, the style of the community, and you see these 14 here. And you'll see this kind of pop up here. The districts that are highlighted in blue are known as basic aid districts, which I described a few moments ago. So as you can see, we are just right there in that group of basic aid districts as far as how we deliver services. But go to the next slide, Dr. Choi. You'll see the yellow circle around that red bar. That's the level, the percent that San Marino relies on local revenue sources for its revenues to run its schools. If you look at the top of that chart there, Carmel Unified, right? Basic aid district, look at the amount of local funding required to run Carmel. The blue is the state funding, right? The LCFF. And so the reason Carmel, for instance, or Laguna Beach is so large is because their basic aid formula allows them to capture a great amount more of state funding. So on to the next slide, Dr. Choi. So this is kind of gives it a different picture. And this is different because if you look at the numbers, this is the revenue, the actual dollars, okay, that is raised for each student. So we're right there, midway down, once again, right in the lower end of that basic aid group. But the actual dollars collected in the year 2019 to run our schools was about $14,745 per kid. Look at Carmel for a moment, $26,177. Laguna Beach, $23,306. That's per student. I'm going to show you in a minute what that might look like if we had that kind of data. Go ahead, Steve. So the district that I actually found in the state that we are most like because of size and economics is Laguna Beach down in Orange County. And again, I want you to look at the red bar, the local funding at Laguna versus our local funding. Next slide, the state funding is the blue. Go ahead, Stephen. Circle up one more slide, Stephen. There you go. That's the local funding in Laguna Beach. And you can see once again that discrepancy that exists between us, okay? You can go to the next slide, Dr. Choi. So if San Marino had USD, which is almost exactly the same size as Laguna Beach in a very similar community and economics, if we had the basic aid formula Laguna Beach has, we would have had an additional $24,700,000 in revenues in the year 2019. So just put that in perspective for a moment. The structural deficit we had was approximately $3 to $3.5 million. Not only would we have satisfied that structural deficit, we'd have an additional $21 million to apply to our schools. And I think that's the strongest picture I can give you of the difference between San Marino, who's delivering on a similar type of education, what we could have if we were basic aid. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a spending comparison. So we looked at revenues for a minute. This is spending for small, wealthy, low LCFF and UPP unified districts. Again, the blue stars indicate the basic aid districts. The large blue bars is the percentage of expenses spent on certificated teachers. The light blue is the percent spent on pupil support services, and the orange is the percent of expense spent on administrative costs. And we'll show you that broken down here. So next slide. So as far as our pupil support services, our counseling, psychologists, other pupil support services, of the group of 14 that we're compared to, we are number 2. So we are spending 4.4% of our income in 2000, or our expenses in 2019 on pupil support services. That's wonderful. We often hear of the importance of school counseling and support. The next slide, Stephen. We're mid, next, no, we'll go back one, please. We're next, as far as the teachers go, we are just above the average with this group of 14 school districts, approximately 34.77% of current expense are on certificated teacher costs. And the next slide, of the group of 14, we are dead last in administrative expenses. And if you go to the next slide, since these rankings came out for 2019, where we were 319th out of 349 school districts, unified school districts in the state of California, spending on administration, we actually this last year reduced by another 0.3%, as shown in the second interim report in the last meeting, which would have made us 337th out of 347 school districts in administrative costs. Next slide. So the bottom line is we're very, very lean on the administrative side. So this is, I'm going to run through this quick. This is another group of 14. These are just small school districts, 2,800 students to 3,200 students. Again, you'll see the red, local funding. None of these school districts rely on local funding like we do. Go ahead, Steve. Next slide. And again, spending comparison, even in this group of very small districts, we are the lowest administrated school district of this group of 14. Next slide, please. One problem that we are addressing is rising special education costs. That's us there kind of in the middle. And you can see the red bars that over the last 5 years, actually, our special education costs have come up quite a bit. And there's some reasons for that, one of which we'll show on the next slide. Before we get there, the overall special education costs in this group of schools, we are at 22.05% of our overall expenses devoted to special education, which puts us number 2 in that list. And you don't want to be high on this list. So the next slide, please. One of those items that has impacted us most over the last 10 years, you can see that we've more than doubled, in fact, almost tripled in our expenditures on special education aides in classrooms. And this has significantly impacted us both in salaries and in benefits as well. Go ahead, Stephen. I put this in only to demonstrate that our benefit costs here, I think our HR department and our unions have done such a great job of working together to keep these costs under control. If you look at this as a comparison of Laguna Beach and San Marino Unified, right now, 2020, Laguna Beach is spending $7,933 per employee. On benefits, we're spending only $7,018. So we are spending $284,419 less than Laguna Beach, but costs continue to rise. So what can and cannot be done? We've heard some really wonderful ideas and I've been writing them down. I really appreciate all the input. I think there's some great ideas out there in our community. So what is possible? We can continue to rein in costs and we need to account for declining enrollment and natural attrition. So California continues to lose students and our region continues to lose students. And we've heard it before, there are school districts around us closing schools. So we have to make sure that year in and year out, we account for declining enrollment with our staffing. We can streamline programs and combination assignments. And I know that's the hard work that's going on right now. We can negotiate salary reductions and furlough days. We can reduce special education spending and the implementation of our multi-tier system of support strategies and SSD processes. They are designed to intervene for students at the lowest level possible and really to get kids into programs, intervention programs that help them move along in their education. And when you have effective processes like that, you lower your special education costs because you don't divert kids into the individual education plans as easily. Also, we are pleased that we will be bringing on a new special ed director. That will be another part of our ability to rein in special education costs. As we've heard tonight from many folks, we need to raise local funds. We need to renew a parcel tax. We'll be talking about that here in a few minutes. We need to get behind a foundation campaign. I've had community members say we need to develop an endowment, maybe even just to deal with things like deferred maintenance or somehow endow positions. We need to reach out to alumni more effectively. We have a wonderful alumni out there around this country and around this world, and we need to be better at reaching out to them. And we also need to develop a greater facilities use fees schedule so that we are competitive with districts around us. We've heard future ideas, sell or lease surplus property. That's an endeavor that takes years in the making. It's something that the Board of Education has to do a lot of listening on in the community, and there's a lot of work that has to be done there. We need to build unique programs, academies, and magnets. We need to attract our kids back to our schools, right? And we need to attract new families to our community who are looking for a stellar education for their children that meets their kids' needs and really has a forward view of what we're doing to prepare our kids. There's the possibility that consolidating grade levels and sites, we've heard that a few times as well. These are all future ideas that will have to be talked about quite a bit with our community. What is outside of our control, however, is increasing pension costs. We have no control over that whatsoever. Health and welfare premiums increase, and we're hearing that this is going to take on staggering consequences as a result of the pandemic. We'll see how that goes. We cannot cut many of our special education costs. Many of those are outside of our control. We can't control that we're not a basic aid district. We'd like to be, but we're not. And we can't control the local control funding formula and its revenue swings. It's a formula that has been given to us and we have to live within it. As you may be hearing, more and more companies leaving California. That has a profound effect on the state budget for education. We cannot control our salary step and column. That's just a part of the structure of how we compensate our employees. We cannot control federal and state grant funding equity gaps. And we cannot control the fact that we lack developer fees from new development. So these are just some things that we can and cannot control. And so let's get on to some ideas here in a few moments. So in summary, SMUSD is not adequately funded by the state of California through the LCFF and must develop stable local funding sources. SMUSD has the highest dependency on local revenue streams of any district in the state that I could find. SMUSD has engaged in and will continue to take steps to right-size staffing to match enrollment. And SMUSD leadership had eliminated the structural deficit and had begun to restore the reserve account. If you look at our second interim report, as Mr. Lee referenced, you'll see that. The fact of the matter is the voters rejected Measure E in its form, exposing the district to an immediate $4.1 million funding cliff. So now the community of San Marino must engage in a financial strategy plan for the long term. I've heard many folks say, we can't just keep going through this every year. And I can't agree more. We have to get to where we have a long-term strategy for local funding. And it will include state, federal, local funding to match the values, goals, and actions of the district. The San Marino Schools Foundation will continue to engage in substantive fundraising to provide the general fund with a rising $2 million contribution to maintain and build programs. And I'm just so proud of the foundation and the work they've done over the years. I know so many of you probably listening tonight have served on the foundation or have supported the foundation. It's truly, before I came to San Marino, hearing about this foundation from the outside, it was just stunning that they've been able to do what they've been able to do for so many years. And so the superintendent, me, recommends to the Board of Education to develop and pass a new parcel tax resolution to have a measure placed before the voters at the earliest possible date to restore funding. Dr. Choi. So recommended next steps as far as reducing expenditures during this crisis. And I want to say we are in the middle of a financial crisis. And when you're in a crisis, you have to take extraordinary steps. So during this time, some of this may seem as minutia to you, but it's important. We're going to eliminate and or curtail unnecessary spending. Meals, donations will be sought. No meals will be bought. Water for the district, paper goods, equipment repair, all will be curtailed. There will be no travel or conferences, not that there has been this year at all, but there will be no travel and conferences unless it's limited to vendor or JPA sponsored or state one-time conference grant money but no district resources will be used for any travel and conferences until this crisis is passed. And we will reduce memberships in some local clubs and organizations to reduce costs. From a maintenance standpoint, we're going to approve only crisis maintenance projects. Of course, student and staff safety is paramount, and that will continue to be on the front burner for us. But with the exception of necessary emergency repairs, only in-house work with minimal part expense will be allowed. Our district boardroom has not had a working air conditioner now in over a year, and we're not going to replace it anytime soon until after this crisis. We'll have to put on hold textbook and materials adoptions at this time, and we're going to continue to work with the city of San Marino on any possible shared services that we can come up with. We will look for additional cost savings, possibly through additional classified reductions in force, although we really are at a minimum, we believe. We will reduce consulting and legal fees to a minimum for compliance and protection. And we will minimize staff time for non-essential demands. So these are some steps that we're enacting immediately to help curtail any additional costs. As far as next steps with revenues, the San Marino Schools Foundation is working very hard to finish out their 2020-21 regular campaign. And I will do anything within my power to help support that and to work with James Lau and Aaron Bilbado and the foundation. Of course, you've probably already heard this, but we'll accept gifts, donations, or financial commitments from community groups. Our San Marino Unified School District Board of Education, I hope, will adopt a resolution to place a measure on the ballot to restore funding for teachers and counselors with no perpetual or permanent provision. That the board will provide direction to staff with regards to other possible funding sources related to carryover and one-time dollars. And we've heard that from many community members tonight. We are going to work to revise and implement facility use fees for all outside groups. These must be in line with industry or competition standards. We're going to work with the city of San Marino on any possible supports or joint use agreements that may be possible out there. And we're going to spend the CARES Act, COVID relief plan, and federal rescue plan dollars in compliant but creative ways to offset this crisis. Dr. Choi. So that ends my presentation for this evening. And so I would invite Mrs. Ryan or the board members to chime in with questions or comments.
All right.
All right, Stevie, can you just put that last slide up for me, please? Thank you. The one right before that.
Did you want to make a comment, Jane, or you just wanted the slide up?
Not at this moment. I didn't have a chance to finish.
Okay, Mrs. Chanlin.
I would say in regards to Jane's question to look at this slide again, and I'm also reviewing the slide again. We really needed these slides before we saw them tonight. I mean, we really we're supposed to have these 72 hours ahead of time, and we are looking at them for the first time now. So it is very difficult for us to have comments on this. And I really think we need to be better prepared in the future.
Thank you, Mrs. Chanlin. Any other comments?
Well,
Mr. Chang, you're muted. Oh, okay.
Well, I can make a comment. I'm ready to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not surprised that this comment. I think this is an excellent analyst. Thank you so much for Dr. Wilson, especially you analyze about the cost and the funding through the different category. I think tonight, this meeting is for the Board of Education, educate us. But since we have about 200 audience here, I like the audience to understand the cost structure and the revenue structure. Yeah, that's the reason, no matter what, a lot of rumor talking about, the not transparent, and then we are not really cut the cost. I believe for my 20 years, I believe that we are cutting the cost. And we are not avoid, we cannot avoid about the, the why we need to do the action plan, because we are losing the 4 million from the parcel tax. And the people are always thinking about why we need to the parcel tax. We have a parcel tax from, I think, about 20 years ago, from the 1 to the 2 to 9, those graphics to show you why we need to the parcel tax. Yeah, I believe in the beginning, when my first turn as the Board of Education, the Western, the volunteer, they come out of parcel tax because they already know, the someday, the state will not give us enough money. If we want to maintain the quality education, and we want to have a enriched curriculum and instruction service. And I just heard one parent said, we want to have a small size. Yes, because you want to have a small size. That's the reason we have the parcel tax. And right now, the voter vote not enough reach to the 2/3, then we consider it's a failure. So that's the reason we lose the local revenue. So I think everyone need to understand. You can continue to criticize the district, but you need to really understand. First of all, you need to know the public school in California, 101 public school funding, and then you really need to look at the tonight and the graphic. If you don't believe what Dr. Wilson say, just verify each school district, and then you will need to believe that's the truth. So this movement, I think we may have another chance to initiate the parcel tax. But this movement, no matter you complain we are going to cut or the plan B, I think the most important, if we can reach the census tonight and or the next couple meeting for the parcel tax, I think everyone need to work together. You cannot just depend on the co-chair campaign for your parcel tax. Everyone need to talk to your neighbor, talk to your friend, talk to your school parent. So then we will eventually reach to the 2/3 to pass the parcel tax. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chang, for your words. And okay, Mrs. Chanlin.
One more question I have is the $4.6 million relief money. I understand that's one-time money. I understand that we have a lot of, things in place in regards to COVID and getting kids back, but is there any of that money that we are thinking of using to help save some of these teachers in the interim while we get another parcel tax on the ballot?
Steve, could you go back to, I think it's slide 27. Yes, Mrs. Chanlin, slide 27. Okay, so a couple things here. One is provide direction to the staff. The board will provide direction to staff with regards to other funding sources, which would include carryover and one-time monies. And that bottom bullet as well speaks to that. It's important to understand that the money that has been provided has been broken into kind of three main areas: the CARES Act, the COVID relief plan, the federal rescue plan dollars. I would invite Dr. Delatorre to jump in here at any moment here to keep me out of trouble. Really only one of these funding sources has the flexibility within it to be used this way, and that's the federal rescue plan dollars. So that's something that we are analyzing and trying to work through. And I know Dr. Delatorre has been working very hard to identify, there's a certain amount of that you have to preserve for administrative costs and other destinations. But as far as I'm concerned, all things are on the table. We're here to restore programs as much as possible, would warm my heart. But again, we have to, as we budget, we have to make sure that we demonstrate to the county that we're able to support programs 3 years out. So that's a challenge within that piece. But the simple answer to your question is yes, we're looking at all funding sources.
Do we know about how much money we're talking about regarding the federal rescue plan? And do we have like any?
Dr. Delatorre, are you available to jump in on that one?
I am, but we are still analyzing all of those things. And Vanjie and I are going to be attending a webinar by the end of the week that will outline and detail how these different funding sources that are one-time funding sources can be spent. And so we're looking at that. We're looking at the total allocation for our school district. And we're going to get that information to the board by the end of this week, probably through the weekly board memo.
Thank you, Dr. Delatorre. And as I understand, even from my own work on the federal rescue plan dollars, we have to be very careful because it has restrictions and guidelines. We don't want to have to give back the money if it's if it's misused. So we'll be very careful with that when you bring the information back to us that we are compliant.
Yeah, and the great piece on all this is that if we move forward and successfully pass a renewal that the community believes in and honors, then those dollars can truly be used for what I think they were sort of designed to be used for, right? And so, it's important that we not lose our focus, because this money, while it helps us right now, maybe to an extent, it certainly doesn't help us down the line, and it puts us right back in another line to go through this again in another year or two out. So absolutely, but I appreciate the question because we are looking at that.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Any other board comments at this time? Yes, Mr. Barbary.
So I think that, I think what's really challenging at this point is that no one knows what school is going to look like next year. I think that, I think one could argue that if we continue to have limited capacity in our classrooms, especially in the elementary areas, having a class, having class sizes that are larger than we have this year, if we have to, we can't bring back the teachers, you may not even be able to have that many kids in the classroom because, for space limitations and separation and all that. And so, there's some ways you can probably argue that there may be a COVID element to that, right? I mean, right. But that's the problem, is we don't know what next year is going to look like. Certainly the vaccine, at least from what I've seen, hasn't been approved for use on people under 18 yet. So, and while some people are getting it under 18, it's not really approved for that. So, next year's school may look something like this year's school. We all hope it doesn't, but we don't know. And certainly with that limitation on the vaccines for nearly all of our population, who knows what next year brings. And so I would hope that maybe there's some of those sort of angles we can take. If there is some limitation to the size of the classroom or the number of students in a classroom, maybe it really is a COVID issue. So the COVID relief funds possibly could be used for something like that. But I want to just go back and talk about there certainly is plenty of interest out in the community for making donations. We're already seeing some very, very adorable pictures of families that have given to the Schools Foundation. We hope that money doesn't have to be used. We hope that there's a way to pass a parcel tax so that we can bring everybody back. But of course, the timing of all this gets really challenging, and that's where donations to the Schools Foundation can help us, because if we have the money by May 15th or so, we can rescind all or some of the notices that have gone out. So while people are running a lot of scenarios in their mind, we can approve a parcel tax in June, July, August, whenever that happens to be. And we all support that, and we think that it's with some modifications, we think that it'll pass. But the problem is, by then, many of our teachers may have taken jobs in other places, right. And we don't want to lose our great staff. That's not the point of this. And so, I encourage people to If you do want to give to a specific program, understand that you're giving to a program, not to save a teacher, because of the way this all works. You could give to save a program. We do need, if you are so set on saving a program and you want that money to go there, you need to make sure you raise the full amount that program would cost, that teacher would cost. But I really encourage people to give to the general fund. I think that is the most efficient way to really direct the funds to where the need is most dire. I don't want to see large class sizes in elementary school. But I don't want to see science classes that are science labs that are dangerous because there's too many kids at a table. And none of us want to see any of that happen. All of the concerns that we've heard raised here and in our emails over the last 2 weeks are all very real, and we understand that. And I think that giving the board and the district the most flexibility to try to direct those funds, if it's something less than the $4.26 million, whatever we need, I think that's the best way. But for those that want to do directed giving, I encourage you to do that as well. And just let's make sure that if you're so set on saving a program, that you raise the whole funds for that program, so that we don't have to make decisions that might jeopardize other areas. So I thank everybody for giving. And I thank you, Dr. Wilson. I think this is a good analysis. I think that it's important to really understand how the money is spent, I think is critical. And you've shown in these slides that we do spend so little on administration. And it's really kind of hard to believe, because we have such a small population, a student population, and we're spending so little per student. And at some point you have to, at some point I think Dr. De La Torre says, 3,200 students is kind of where we start to hit our stride. And from a business point of view, you hit a kind of a economy of scale with a certain administration staff level. We could afford to grow, 400 more students without really increasing the administration. And that's where we really start to really hit our stride and really most use those resources most effectively, because you have to have a superintendent, you have to have people running the district. We need that. We want a great school district, and so we need great people running the district. And certainly, if there was some way to grow the students by starting to look at the programs once we get past this hurdle, that's really one of the goals, but it won't solve the problems. I think this presentation makes it very clear. Adding 200, 300, 400 more students isn't going to solve the problem. It may make it a little bit easier, but it's still not going to solve the problem. We're still going to need support from the community, from local funding sources. And like I said, I thank everybody for giving and encourage you all to do so that we can retain as many of our great teachers as we can.
Mr. Barbary,
thank you, Mr. Barbary. Dr. Wilson, did you have
real quick?
something? I want to make sure Mrs. Chong had an
Sure.
opportunity.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a lot of questions and comments. Actually, Dr. Wilson, if you want to go first.
I was just going to say thank you, Mr. Barbary. One of the things I discovered as I was looking at these districts that are like us is the layers of help. And I think you nailed it, because irregardless of how large you are, you have the same compliance, demands of a regular school district. My former district, the LCAP was developed by 2 coordinators, 2 levels below the assistant superintendent level. Not even the directors did that work. The coordinators did that work as technical work. And Dr. Richter here is wearing about 100 hats in the education side, everything from special education to compliance to development of curriculum. Dr. De La Torre took on a position that was an assistant superintendent position without any additional compensation, and is absolutely knocking it out of the ballpark. And that's when I pause and I hear these comments about communication. And I can tell you right now, I want to be as communicative as possible. Sometimes you just run out of seconds in the day. And this team, I'm very proud of them. They're working very, 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 very hard. They're committed. They're committed to teachers. They're committed to kids. They're committed to these wonderful programs we have. And so I appreciate you recognizing that, because 3% of our expenditures goes to administration. And you just look up the road at our competition, it's around 5%. So anyway, thank you for that. Sorry, Ms. John.
Thank you. So Mrs. Chong, do you want to go or do you want me to go next? Because
You can
you
go.
seem
You
like
can
you
go.
need
Well,
to.
you can go if
All right, so just be mindful of our time because we still need to get to other business, right? So, because there is 11B, 11C, and I want to make sure that we get through. So prioritize, I think, and then we can continue. This is a information item. This is not an action item. We can continue to ask the questions. So my comment is, first of all, thank you, Dr. Wilson, for the work that you've done. I know that you're up very late into the night working on how to help us to recover and strategically help us with finances. My question is, you mentioned about the parcel tax and then the renewal of the parcel tax. How can we keep our teachers, because we've noticed them, what's the timeline in being able to keep them on their on track? Like, do we have to have a certain date or a deadline? Because
Mrs. Ryan, with all due respect, could we put that off to the next item? Because that's actually where we're going to talk about.
Oh, that's where you're going to go with the future?
Yeah, so that's a
Okay.
great question. I think we can just do it in the next item, though.
Oh, okay. All right. So Mrs. Chong, you're up.
Okay, so a lot of questions I got from the community. First, actually, before I get to that, thank you for that very comprehensive report. That was helpful to put it in context. One of the questions I'm getting from the community is, I think we keep talking about the COVID relief monies. And so I do appreciate that we were able to highlight the fact that the federal dollars is really the only one we have flexibility within. But there are also questions about what we spent our 2020 money on. And I'm gonna say something for the sake of time, like a really quick summary, and then correct me if I'm wrong somewhere. We were given money from the state and the federal government, and we were told we needed to spend it by December 31st, 2020. So we spent a lot of that money on device replacement, which we're way behind in. All the PTAs know how much we're constantly going at them to give money. We were constantly getting $20,000, $30,000 donations from PTAs, from enrichment fund, and that was how we were able to replace our devices. And we were looking at a point at which we really needed to replace a lot of them, which is where that COVID money came in handy, because we had to spend it by a certain date. We had an intense need for it, and we were able to spend it on devices. We also spent it on PPE, which we knew that at some point we were going to reopen. So we spent a lot of money on getting a lot of PPE and putting things on order. I think some of the other money then, we sort of found other ways to spend it for learning loss mitigation, for programs that were computer programs and digital programs to assist with our digital learning needs. And then the government sort of did what they've been doing, which is then they told us at the last minute, oh, actually, you don't need to spend it all. We're going to let you use it at the end of next year. And I was like, oh, here we get dinged for planning ahead. And we ended up spending it because we had student needs, very real student needs we had to meet. Am I wrong on any of that narrative?
You're nailing it.
Okay. I wanted to put that out there because I think there's a lot
one thing to it, though, to your narrative?
Yeah.
Yeah, the three pockets of money, CARES Act, federal dollars. If you go look at the website where they document what every school district in the state of California is getting on that, you will find that the LAUSD, for every kid in LAUSD, all 600,000 of them, they're getting $11,100 each, okay? San Marino, $1,663 each. So not only is everything what you just said true, even like I mentioned earlier, when you get to grant funding and you get to relief dollars, right? We're getting about 1/8 of what LAUSD children are getting.
So I want to just reiterate, I just really want to stress that all of those Chromebooks that we've been using, all of the hotspots, all of the PPE that we're taking advantage of to provide a high quality experience for our children this year, both in hybrid and in distance, we used that money in 2020 to pay for, right? I mean, that's kind of the reality. So, had we known we would be here, assuming we even had flexibility with that money, which we probably didn't, could never have known. So I wanted to put that out there because I know that there's been a lot of questions about where we spent the 2020 money. And then regardless of that, we have this 2021 money. And I'm very heartened to hear that we're looking at ways to use it flexibly. I know that it is a long-standing policy among all school districts, all public school districts, to not use one-time dollars on anything that breathes. Right. Because we have to obligate ourselves with these 3-year programs. And I want to reiterate that that's important because a lot of people have said, how have we gotten here? That's how we got here. We would actually get one-time dollars and donations for programs, and then we would be encumbered to continue those programs. And after 2 or 3 years, that donation dollars dried up, or the donation dollars moved from one program to another, or we grew programs. I want to stress that we brought to San Marino CTE pathways. We brought partnerships with Caltech. We brought partnerships with Huntington Library. We brought a lot of activities, award-winning programs that cost a lot of money to run to our schools the last few years. And we didn't necessarily have a commensurate amount of LCFF dollars coming at the same time. We took a huge hit in how much money we were getting from the state in 2015. And so we kept spending in a way that we necessarily couldn't sustain. And there were some bad decisions made in the last few years without realizing where we would be. I think the hardest thing about all of this is always that we only make the decisions we can with the information we have and what's in front of us. And that's been so frustrating for all of us. And then just running out of time to even figure out what the next plan is or to communicate that effectively. So I think I appreciate that we're looking at different ways to do that. And I think I'm going to sort of just hold off. I do want to also acknowledge, I really appreciate the work that the administration has done at the school sites and at the district level, because considering the amount of work we're doing to deal with this year, plan for next year, and deal with the COVID crisis and our financial crisis, I think we're probably doing the work of 25 people with a staff of 10. And that includes, less assistant principals. Somebody said, oh, Dr. Lin is the one doing the collection of data of, students returning to classroom. And I was like, yeah, it's not like he has an assistant principal to do it. So he's literally staying up and, collecting all of this and creating spreadsheets. And so I appreciate how much work everybody has been putting in, from the administration down to the teachers, and the support staff, and the volunteers. It's just, it's been a lot of work. So that's it. We'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chung. Student board member, did you have a comment, or I didn't want to exclude?
No,
okay.
It's time.
Okay, we're good. Thank you so much. So 11B, next steps. Dr. Wilson, I've keyed you up and set you up. Future parcel tax options. This is informational item only.
Yeah, and before I get started, I just want to say the items tonight are information. They're a starting point. And sometimes in information items, you bring presentations and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just talk with the board. And in this case here, I just want to talk with the board here for a second. So as you know, our attorneys at Lozano and Smith, specifically their parcel tax expert, advised us that there were only 2 possible dates going forward for a parcel tax election this year, 2021. And those dates they gave us were August 31st and November 2nd. We confirmed this with the LA County Registrar's Office, okay? We further confirmed this with a consultant we used to renew the parcel tax. However, in our efforts to leave no stone unturned and to investigate every possible option, we contacted our prior consultant, Joy Coomer, who told us that the information provided to us may not be completely accurate. So she advised that the LA County has always allowed for a parcel tax to go on the ballot of any Tuesday of the year, and in fact has been and is being contemplated right now by the LA County school districts around our counties. So she advised us to reach out again to the Los Angeles County Registrar's Office to obtain confirmation. So Dr. Delatorre contacted Alex Oliveira, Division Manager of Election Information and Preparation at the LA County Registrar's Office, which is our usual point of contact. He's kind of the one guy in the county who knows everything about elections. We had originally spoken to someone in his office a few weeks ago, right after we realized Measure E was not going to be successful. It was not Alex because he was on bereavement leave. You know, you talk about perfect storm things that kind of happen right in the moment when we needed his guidance. He was on bereavement leave for several weeks. So once he got back, he told us that parcel tax elections were a possibility on any Tuesday of the year pending approval from the county, and that's a big if. He advised us to send a written letter to him requesting an expedited response confirming the accuracy of the parcel tax election information, which I have done. With respect to the question that I'm sure is on a lot of folks' mind, in fact, we heard it tonight, whether the date of the parcel tax election has any effect on the taxable year and when you can actually receive parcel tax monies. So we also received conflicting information on that. We were advised by one source that in order to receive the funds this year, we would have to have the election before July 1st. Of course, that put us into an instant depression, right? If we got to get it done before July 1st or we can't get the funds this year. However, subsequently, and I want to thank Dr. Delatorre for this, we were able to obtain written confirmation from Evelyn Ramirez, who is the tax services supervisor with the Los Angeles County Auditor Controller Property Tax Services Office. So this is the agency to whom we would submit our assessments on an annual basis. She stated that the date of the election itself is not the trigger for funding, but rather when the board approves the resolution and when we file the letter certifying the results. Those two things, when the board approves the resolution and when we file the letter certifying the results. Accordingly, if the election is held on August 31st and we're able to file the results by September 15th, we will still receive the funding for this year. This is according to Evelyn Ramirez, who is the tax services supervisor. Therefore, with this new information and assuming that the Los Angeles County Registrar's Office provides the written confirmation, which as of this moment, they have not yet done that, but we're expecting it any moment, the board may have more options, specifically that we could schedule an earlier parcel tax than originally contemplated. The earliest being Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. And there's, that's subject, to the 88 days notice, the E-88 day notice requirement. So the latest being August 31st. So think the earliest June 29th, the latest August 31st, if we don't want to miss the September 15th property tax deadline. But please note that this may be cutting it really close, as the county usually certifies an election in 2 weeks, but technically they have 30 days to provide a certification. So there's one more date the board should probably be aware of, is that our contracts with our certificated classified employees expire on June 30th. And we're all aware of the May 15th deadline for rescinding notifications. So it's my recommendation that the board give me direction on holding a special meeting of the Board of Education next Tuesday night, March 30th, 2021 at 7 p.m. to consider all of our options with placing a measure on the ballot sometime between June 30th and August 31st. In that meeting, staff will have all of the available information that's reliable in the time. We'll have the word from the county registrar to provide the board the opportunity to make the best possible decision regarding the future local revenues of our district. So that's the information I wanted to share with you. That's up to this afternoon. We were in contact with Alex Oliveira's office at the registrar, and he's promising to deliver us a written confirmation within a day. So that's the report from the parcel tax. So at this point, what I'm asking the board is to provide some direction about holding a special meeting of the Board of Education next Tuesday night.
Unfortunately, I cannot make it next Tuesday night.
Mr. Barbary, I saw your hand come up.
I think we need to make sure that we do it as early as possible, whether it be Tuesday or Monday or whatever that right date is.
Right.
so that we don't shut out. There is, again, I think you said the 30th, but I think the date is the 29th of June.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I
Would be
misstated
the
that.
last, would be the last. And the reason why I say that and is I think the earlier, I believe that the vote won't change between, you know, who will vote for this and who will vote against it would not change between June and August. And I think the earlier that we show that we are trying to get this done, I think that it says something to our teachers that we're trying everything we can to get them, and to the classified staff, by the way. You know, yes, there's going to be a little blip because we won't have certified results, but and we certainly, you know, this will certainly be after May 15th, which is unfortunate. But I think the earlier that we can get this election out there, again, I think that it's kind of it's a foregone conclusion that we'll have an election sometime between June 29th and August 31st, one way or, you know, at one of those dates. And I think that, you know, the earliest possible, it shows a lot that, you know, to the teachers and to the community that we're trying everything we can to mitigate this as early as possible.
So Dr. Wilson, are you prepared earlier, at an earlier date than next Tuesday if Mrs. Chanlin is not able to make Tuesday?
I think we would do everything we can to make sure Mrs. Chanlin was accommodated. So
No, I meant, could you
Yeah, as far as the
go
meeting
Monday, Friday of this week? I'm just asking if you're able to do that.
Dr. Del Torre, I don't know if you have any additional information. I think, I mean, just short, yes, I think we could probably make that happen. We still have some kind of, like I said, loose pieces out there that we're trying to solidify here.
So board members, are we open to a Friday or a Monday meeting?
Is Mrs. Chanlin available Monday?
Yes.
And Dr. Wilson, I verified we can do either.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mrs. Chung?
Sorry, I'm like literally checking my calendar.
I guess I better do that too, right?
Yeah.
However, I think I'm going to cancel whatever might be there.
Well, it's my daughter's birthday, so I don't think I can cancel that. But considering her education's at stake, that's probably the best birthday present I can give her. Ha.
There you go. I like it.
No, I would say perhaps we can set 2 dates. I'm concerned that if we do it on Friday, that won't give enough time for the staff to adequately prepare. And I don't want to find ourselves having questions during that meeting. So if I would propose that we hold Friday and Monday, or Friday and Wednesday, whatever the earliest possible is, to ensure that you have all of the information you need so we can make an informed choice of what our next plan of action is. Because I don't want to find ourselves having more questions because COVID is just relentless and we keep finding ourselves with questions every time we answer a question. Right. So I just want to ensure that we have enough time to prepare. I did have a question as well. Would this be a mail-in ballot?
Yes,
okay.
It would be.
And that would mean that the ballots would be mailed out a month prior, right? Okay, because I am concerned if we're looking in the summer, I think earlier the better to ensure that the ballots arrive before people start flitting off on vacation. Everyone's a little cabin fevery right now. Right. And I'd be worried, I think I'd be a little bit worried about people not submitting ballots because they're on vacation.
So June 1st is if you directed us to go out for the June date, June 1st is when the county, that's E29. So that's when the county would actually begin mailing ballots.
Okay, and that puts us right when Memorial Day weekend hits. So I know we have graduation weekend that weekend as well, which means we'll have people around, but then they're off. And so I am concerned. We need to do a huge education campaign with the community to ensure that everybody looks for the ballot, fills in the ballot, and sends the ballot back. And if for some reason it gets lost in the mail, that's part of the communication campaign as well, to ensure, did you see your ballot when it came in? If it didn't, this is what it looks like, and this is how you get a replacement one.
Can I just, while we're on that, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just, and just so you know, the ballots don't get forwarded. I know of in this last election, we had some friends who were away on vacation and had their mail forwarding, and their mail actually, the ballots for some reason don't get forwarded because I guess they want people who are living in the, or I know of some people whose ballots didn't get forwarded. So don't, we shouldn't rely on the fact that ballots get forwarded in that either. So you got to make sure you get somebody to get your mail, or however you get your mail if you're away, so that you're able to do to cast your vote.
And then one more thing I wanted to stress, I don't want the community to misunderstand that if we do this, this means that we get to retain all of our teachers and programs for next year without any fundraising. We cannot send a budget to this county with any of these teachers in that budget. So unless we find a way to restore that money, we're really not going to be able to hold on to those positions simply because of the timing. And so I think there's going to be the next logical question in my mind then would be, well, then why should I donate if I can just look at that money be reinstated next year? And to that, I would say that this is part of the long-term financial stability plan, because what it does is it gives us breathing room so we don't find ourselves here every year. Because we are looking at rising costs over the next few years that are out of our control. We don't know what things are going to look like post-COVID. And so having that parcel tax money in our account next year allows us a lot of flexibility and a lot of planning to do a lot of that work that Dr. Wilson was referring to when he says future planning. When we think about academies or charters or magnets or exciting new programs that are going to really attract and retain families, we need money to do that. We need a stable funding source to be able to plan for that. And so having that parcel tax, in addition to any monies that we fundraise this spring, would give us so much of a nest egg. It would be like, when you buy a house and you still have money left over to buy furniture and you're not sleeping on the floor. So I really want to encourage the community not to think of this parcel tax money as necessarily full replacement, because we'll still lose all the teachers, which, as we've seen tonight, would just be probably lead to a little bit of a spiral, which would be devastating for our students who want to come back to some really exciting things next year. And I want us to be able to give that to them.
Thank you. Okay, so do I hear direction then from the board that we should schedule at least one board meeting for Monday? And that date exactly is, let's see.
Not 29th.
29th, right. And did I also hear that we should go ahead and hold a second date as well?
If we could hold Friday, and Friday is possible, my daughter would thank you, but only assuming we actually get the information we need by then.
Well, and I'm just looking at the calendar here. And so if we were to choose June 29th, I think that what you'd have to have the resolution to them by 5 p.m. on Friday, April 2nd.
Correct.
So there's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if your plan was to potentially have wording available for us to review at that meeting, so we didn't have to have another one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just being conscious of the fact that it's already the 23rd, it's already Tuesday, and you're going to have the wording and all of the plan and the potential the filing for the newspaper and all that stuff set up by Friday. So Jane,
so we have a little bit extra time on the newspaper notification. We will absolutely work in notifying through the Tribune for sure. Whether it's 2 papers or 1, it's going to be the Tribune for sure. And we have that date lined up. And yes, Mr. Barbie, trust me when I can tell you that we're already working on the wording.
Do we need 1 reading or 2 readings?
1. We confirm that. So we're anticipating that the board was going to direct us forward. So Dr. Delatorre has been working with our consultants on getting that wording together.
By the way, I want to be very straightforward. If everyone think parcel tax is very important, should temporarily just remove your personal, the factor, just commit the date.
Yep.
If you think it's important, otherwise we may not get a consensus.
So what dates are we talking about here?
Are you talking about for the board meeting or for the election itself?
For the board meeting.
Okay, so we're looking at Friday, the 26th and Monday, the 29th as a hold. Do all 5 board members have those dates presently open in their calendar?
My suggestion, if we think that we are going to do it, yeah, please don't consider your family, okay? Just do it.
Duly noted.
And what time? And will this start at 7 p.m.?
I think we should probably keep it at 7 p.m. because we don't want to create any idea that we're trying to, keep the public from knowing about this. So we'll do everything we can to communicate these dates and times. So we thought 7 p.m., that being the regular board time, would probably be the appropriate time to have it.
I think it's important we also share out wider than we usually do.
Right. I think we should send an email, like,
yeah, I think you're right.
Entire community district, and give them the date as well as the Zoom link.
Okay. Dr. Choi, you heard that? The keeper of the 11,000 emails.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Choi.
No, we absolutely want to make sure everybody's informed. I really think that I'm super excited by this because I hope I leave you with this tonight, that we have worked very hard and very truly towards writing this budget, guys. And I was so excited to emerge from this year because we were ready to run. And if we can get that funding restored, we're going to get right back on that path. Okay. So I think this will be something we can rally around as a community. It could be I've said it all along, it can be a pivot point for us, pointing us true north. I mean, in the right direction. And so I'm very excited that it needs to be grassroots. It needs to be all hands on deck, community wide. And as Mr. Chang said, leave your personal biases behind, join us, because this is what we need for the community.
Right, and I want to remind everyone and to echo what my fellow board members are saying about continuing to work together, but to donate to the foundation and help with the funding gap, and to really be intentional about saving jobs. And I'm so thankful for this hopeful presentation on strategic recovery plan, as well as the opportunity to regain our programs through this parcel tax option. So board members, thank you for calendaring or saving the 2 dates. So I'm hearing that Monday is the first priority date and Friday is the second priority. Is that correct? Am I hearing that correct?
From the staff side, that's probably got to be correct. Just there's a lot of work to get there. But if we, if the board is directing us as best as possible to get to Friday, we'll do our best, our level best. But I think for us to get the notification out to the public in an effective way, and then also to prepare effectively, I think Monday's a more rational date.
All right.
Yeah, I would support that, but I also wanted to say one thing too. There was some criticism from the community that the board did not come out and advocate as heavily for the parcel tax as it would have been expected. And I wanted to make clear that the board cannot advocate or oppose the parcel tax. So once we sign this resolution, we are, as a board, effectively required by law to sort of step back. Other than whatever we may say as a personal citizen, we may not operate as a board, in which case maybe then this is that extra time till Monday is an opportunity for members of the community to consider who might be able to assist with the campaign, because this will need a lot of coordination and work very quickly. And as a board, we won't be able to do that because of legal requirements. Individually, yes, we can say what we want, but not as a board. So,
yes. Thank you for that reminder, Mrs. Chong. That's great to know. So if that's okay with you, we're going to move on because there's some more important information we need to get to. And it's 20 to 10 right now. I just want to remind all the board members, we need now item 11C is COVID-19 compliance team recognition of the team, Dr.
Yep.
Stephen Choi and Dr. Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, before Steve jumps on, just this will be our last COVID-19 compliance team update at the board level. The work they've done is phenomenal, and they really are a huge component of how we got to where we got to with opening our schools in a safe manner and the wonderful smiling faces that the kids have shown us. So we just wanted to take a moment tonight to recognize and thank the many members of our community that participated faithfully on a week-by-week basis to get us here. The doctors, the nurses, the community members, our teachers, our SMTA and CSEA partners, all part of this discussion, moving forward. So Dr. Choi, take off.
Thank you. Thank you for that primer, Dr. Wilson. President Ryan, members of the board, student board member Mahini, executive team. It is with bitterness that I report one final update. Since the LA County metrics continue to be constantly being updated, we're moving in the right direction. All of the numbers are moving in the right direction. We're looking as moving in terms of LA County moving into the orange tier as early as the second week of April. So just today, the numbers for the adjusted case rate dropped into the orange tier. So we are in the threshold. We have to hold in the red tier for 3 weeks. So as early as Dr. Wilson mentioned, April 7th, LA County could be in the orange tier. Since the last presentation, as you all know, we are in the red tier. All schools in terms of TK through 12 are allowed to reopen. The K-12 protocols still continue to be upgraded and updated. We do know that there are stable groups that are not necessarily required in the middle and the high school as compared to the elementary schools. They've also revised their elementary teachers having the ability to work with up to 3 stable groups. And about 30 minutes ago, the county just adopted and incorporated the protocol of having students being able to distance with a minimum of 3 feet. That was just updated about 30 minutes ago. So the updates will continue to happen. We've also received some additional guidance on indoor sports. So indoor sports is being allowed, but there are a lot of restrictions that come with it, things like capacity as well as testing. So we're working very closely with our athletics personnel to make sure that we comply with the guidelines to reopen some indoor sports. So as Dr. Wilson had mentioned, when Dr. Wilson asked me to lead the COVID compliance team, I was actually very excited about it. I thought, that this is a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'm sort of a behind the scenes type of person. And, this was really just piggybacking off of the committee and the schools reopening task force that Dr. Wilson had formed in the summer. And as you may recall, the task force had approximately 70 members. So to have the opportunity to work with a smaller team to really establish and enforce safety protocols, to educate our staff and students, as well as serve as that connection between the school district and the county, I was really charged up for it. And there are many positive outcomes that came out of this. We have 30 meetings every single week. And some of the notable outcomes has been that we've been being a step ahead in terms of just seeing the protocols come out. We've created our own screener, our own signage, flow charts, and even have a very robust website that has a lot of our COVID compliance information on there. On top of that, we've also had the opportunity as a team to really engage with our staff, our faculty, as well as our parents by providing weekly updates and even incorporating a feedback form. And I think what I'm most proud of is the fact that, when I mentioned to other districts that have COVID compliance teams, they have a team of like 5 or 10 people, and most of them are just, they're just people that you would expect to be on a COVID compliance team. And you look at San Marino, and we have a team of 31 members. and a solid foundation of parent volunteers and medical experts that I think are the envy of most other COVID compliance teams. So the most powerful outcome is the fact that for every single county site visit that we've had to date, we've met 100% compliance in terms of being a safe environment for our staff and students. So as a final thank you to all of the members that are on the COVID compliance team, I appreciate everything that you have done, your commitment and time and your service to our students, our staff, and very importantly, I want to thank our parent volunteers, professionals that really dedicate their energy and time into ensuring a very safe environment for us. So I know it's hard to get everyone together for a final thank you, but I have this collage up, and I want to thank all of you for participating. We will continue to reach out. I'm looking more at a more concentrated team as we restructure COVID compliance team and focus on implementation. But I will reach out on occasion to reach out for your expertise. So thank you again. And we look forward to focusing our energies on reopening and other possibilities. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I really am going to miss seeing Dr. Dabbs literally at the hospital with their scrubs on and a mask on and talking to us about what's happening, right there on the ground floor. So thank you to everyone. Thank you. And especially a big thank you to Dr. Choi. I know I selected the right guy for this job because Steve is a detail-oriented, as he mentioned. He likes to be a little more behind the scenes. And so much of this work was behind the scenes. And but Steve really effectively led the team and got us to where we are right now. So thank you, Steve.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. And, it was amazing that you got the team together, and what a fabulous team. They worked throughout the summer. So on behalf of the board, thank you so much to you and to our COVID compliance committee. Next is 11D, which is San Marino Unified School District reopening and update. May I please have Mr. Kurtenbach, Mr. Topalian, and Dr. Lena Richter.
It would help if I unmuted first. Thank you, Thank you, Board President Ryan, members of the board, Student Board Member Vahini, Superintendent Dr. Wilson, and executive team. I am pleased to share with you tonight, along with Mr. Kurtenbach and Mr. Topalian, an update on our TK-12 return to school. But before I begin, I too would like to reiterate what many of us here tonight have said. And that is a big thank you to our teachers for all that they've done, all that they're currently doing, and what they will continue to do for our students and our families. With constantly changing guidelines and updates, our teachers continue to shift, continue to reorganize, and continue to restructure to do only the best for their students. And we really could not do this work without them. So again, I just want to make sure that we thank our amazing teachers. Next slide. So I want to begin with the purpose of this presentation, and the purpose is to provide the board with an update on TK-5 return to school for students who are currently participating in distance learning and would like to join the in-person hybrid group. Also highlight the current in-person hybrid participation and current availability for students to join the in-person hybrid group at this point. We'd like to share with you an on-ramp prioritization process, as well as provide the board with an update on our grades 6 through 12 return to school plan, which will be presented by Mr. Kurtenbach and Principal Kurtenbach and Principal Topalian. Next slide, please. So students currently participating in distance learning and requesting to return for in-person hybrid learning will have that opportunity to do so starting tomorrow, March 24th, space permitting per public health and county guidelines. And we know these continue to change and evolve on a daily or actually hourly basis. The district sent out a survey to all TK5 parents to inform parents of the on-ramp opportunity and to gauge interest in returning to in-person hybrid learning. Our teachers and principals have really been working closely for the last few days with one another to identify, confirm availability, and really prepare for students for when they return to campus for in-person hybrid learning if they choose to do so. Next slide, please. In anticipation of inviting additional students to in-person learning, on-ramping or placement was prioritized as follows. The first priority, which was shared with our parents on the survey that was sent out, first priority was given to parents or guardians who requested in-person hybrid learning on the initial commitment surveys for both TK2 and grades 3 through 5. The second priority was given to students who had siblings currently attending in-person hybrid learning, again in grades TK through 5. And then lastly, the third priority was given to parents or guardians who wished to change their initial commitment from distance learning to in-person hybrid learning. So this is how on-ramping or placement returning to school was prioritized. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share this slide. This slide really illustrates participation numbers by school site for students currently participating or attending in-person hybrid learning, as well as the available opportunity or space available for students to return to in-person learning at this point. Again, per state and public health guidelines, we want to make sure that our students are safe and our teachers are safe. That is our #1 priority. So prior to serving our parents and guardians, Carver had 252 students attending in-person hybrid learning. And this is grades TK through 5, with the opportunity for 104 additional students to return, again, adhering to county and public health guidelines. Similarly, Valentine had 291 students attending in-person hybrid learning, with availability for 51 additional students to return to school again. Many classes were already full prior to even beginning the on-ramping process. They were full at capacity, so we were not able to bring additional students to those classrooms. This information of classes being full was also included on the survey, so parents were aware that certain classes had already been were already at full capacity. So after the survey results were analyzed, Carver had 53 students that will be joining the hybrid in-person learning starting tomorrow. And Valentine will have 44 students starting the hybrid in-person learning starting tomorrow. And these numbers are a little bit different than what we see at the slides because our principals and teachers have been extremely busy refiltering, disaggregating the data to make sure that they're capturing all of our students that have requested to be in person. So our current numbers again is 53 for Carver and 44 for students at Valentine. The slide does say 40, but it has been updated to 44. And I do want to mention that nearly all requests, almost 100% of our requests, with the exception of a few, we were able to accommodate. That means students were able to be placed in the classroom with their initial teacher, their homeroom teacher. So there was no reshuffling that had to take place. So nearly all of the requests were accommodated. So we're really happy to hear that. And they were accommodated per county and public guidelines, maintaining social distancing. And so those are the numbers that we currently have. We're looking forward to our students beginning tomorrow. We're excited that the work our teachers have been doing over these past couple of days to prepare the classrooms and welcome some of their other students back to in-person learning. Next slide, please. And at this time, I'm going to give the opportunity to Mr. Kurtenbach and Mr. Topalian to provide a brief update on grades 6 through 12 return to school. And I believe this is informational item 11D2. So Mr. Kurtenbach and Mr. Topalian.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Dr. Richter. Thank you for giving us the opportunity just to speak real quickly about the work that we have been doing over the last few days in preparing to come back to school. Mr. Topalian and I, along with Mr. Catchold and Mr. Cassim Clay, have all been working together throughout these last 4 days to make sure that we are as aligned as we can possibly be in trying to meet the needs of all of our students at both San Marino High School and Huntington Middle School. We have a slated start date of next Thursday, April 1st. We sent our survey out this past Sunday and it was open until 12 o'clock today. Those who did not respond to the survey, which for San Marino High School was roughly 100 students, were automatically placed in the distance learning cohort. Our priorities for creating the schedule the way we did in conjunction with SMTA was a priority of safety for all students. We were trying to also protect instructional minutes and curriculum integrity because many of our teachers have done incredible work over this year in really tailoring the curriculum to an online environment while still maintaining the high rigor. So we wanted to do our best to protect that. We needed to preserve all student schedules. We didn't want to have students have to switch teachers in order to attend. And we wanted to protect the teacher workload, understanding that any change at this point would create a lot more work for our staffs. We also at San Marino High School had a major focus on making sure we could still manage the expectations of many of our end of the year activities, some of which have taken on a very different feel this year, especially AP testing. Mr. Topalian, anything to add on that side? I don't want to take the entire time.
No, you're doing perfectly fine because we're just aligned on what we've been doing. So you're doing fine, Mr. Kurtenbach.
All right. So to help our teachers prepare for our students' return, we are designated next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday as asynchronous learning days. And this will allow our staff to be in their rooms, preparing them, setting up desks the way that are needed, getting the materials out that they need, setting up dividers for students, making sure that all desks are 6 feet apart. That will aid in not just them feeling comfortable and ready, but the students knowing exactly what to expect when they get there. To that end, we are preparing videos. We are going to be pushing out to students on many of the new procedures or updated procedures that we have to do because of COVID. We will also be sending out to all of our students and our teachers, and then of course our parents, the updated scheduling by this Monday, no later. That way, students will know if they are in an A cohort, a B cohort, or a C cohort, C being home the whole time. Teachers will know which students to expect on each day. And again, this will aid in everybody's ability to plan. At the time of the creation of this slide, we had about 630 responses for each school. I'll let Mr. Topalian fill you in on Huntington, but at the high school, we ended with just about 860 responses out of 938 students. Mr. T?
All right, good evening, board. As Mr. Kurtenbach said, a lot of work has been behind the scenes. I first also want to make sure we recognize Eric Negroe, who's been very influential in helping us gather the data today, as Carlos and Ryan, our assistant principals, have really been influential in helping us today gather our data. I want to thank our families that responded. At Huntington Middle School, we had about 90% of our families respond to the survey, which resulted then in just about a 50-50 split of our students are going to be involved in the hybrid model as well as the distance learning model. We had a number of students that did multiple and duplicate responses. I don't know if they were just very excited to thought about coming back to school. So we had to go through and shift through the data to make sure that we had the proper information and the last timestamp. And just like the high school, the same at Huntington Middle School, those families that did not respond automatically went into the distance learning program.
So one of the things we want to make sure, because we know that this came very quickly for everybody, and we've all been trying to continue to pull in the same direction while not pulling ourselves apart. We did want to make sure that the community understands that just because you did not select in-person learning at this point, we're looking at what the future may bring and potential onboarding processes similar to the elementary school. That's a challenge at the secondary, a little bit different than the challenge at the elementary. And we want to get some time under our belts to see how this actually works for us, see what doesn't work for us, and make the adjustments necessary. To that end, quickly on our survey, we did have roughly 30% of students say they would return for in-person instruction, while nearly 70 said that they would stay and not return at this time. Dr. Richter, I think, or do we have one more slide? I'm not sure. So this is the proposed schedule that we are actually working on now to sort of solidify. And by that, all I mean is we're looking to make sure that the times are correct, that the percentage of time in classes is aligned properly. And then we will be pushing out a completed and solid schedule again by Monday. Again, not major differences, just slight difference in time. And that will be also aligned at the middle school. It's one thing we're making very sure of, because we do share several staff, that we align our schedules as much as possible so we can support them and those students. Anything on this, Mr. T?
No, not at this time. You can continue. Or are we ready to go to the next slide as far as speak to the schedule?
Yeah, so this slide, no, we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. T, did you want to say something about the schedule?
I was going to speak to Huntington Middle School's data if we were past schedule.
Yeah, let's go to the data. Go ahead, Mr. T.
Okay, so at Huntington Middle School, as I shared earlier, we had quite a few responses from our students and our families, which we had duplicate responses. Obviously, somehow the kids got a hold of the survey too and gave input before parents, or parents got a hold of it without talking to kid, but we're able to go through the data and really come up with some really solid data that, which again, we can base our decisions on, which will best meet the needs for our kids, as well as best serve, help our teachers serve our students. So for Huntington Middle School, we have approximately 325 students that will be in the hybrid model, which will be the AB schedule that you saw on the prior slide. And then we have 321 students then will be in our distance learning. Those numbers really are solid, and that will provide a good opportunity for our teachers to work with the students that are on campus, as well as work with the students that are at home. And what's really important, what I hear from our staff, is that we're going to make sure that our staff is aware of which students are going to be in person, as well as which students will be at the distance learning program, and as well as which students will be on their A schedule and which students will be on their B schedule. So you can see for Huntington Middle School, just by that chart alone, just a split pretty much down the middle.
And at San Marino High School, you can see ours is about 40-60, and that will mean roughly 312 students will be returning for in-person learning. Mr. KC and I are currently working on those schedules to make sure that we never have more than the requisite or capped number of students in any classroom. And throughout that time, we're considering whether or not, because those classrooms are safe in terms of the number of kids and there is no significant overlap, if we could potentially offer 4 days of instruction in person other than 2, meaning just have one cohort because our cohorts are all small enough. That would mean every student who selected in-person instruction would be here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And as I communicated out to my parents and my staff, the number of days was always going to be dependent upon the number of students who returned. The fewer students who return, the more days because there is no chance of having too high a number of students. The fewer number, the more days you get. So we are considering, we may think we're at a position where we can do that. And that will be communicated out to families and staff and students by the end of this week, which way we're able to go. Next slide, Dr. Richter, Stephen. I'm not sure if we're on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably just to make a comment within that, I just want to let the community know, as well as for the families that are listening for Huntington Middle School, we will not be able to do probably maybe what the high school will be able to do as far as that AC schedule, which would mean that students would be at school 4 days a week with that same cohort due to our numbers in some of our classes. And so we just want to make sure that our families know that as much as we try to align as best as we can with the high school, due to the number of students that are returning, and with our classrooms, we want to make sure that we have the safety in our classrooms provided with Gil Cardenas and with his crew to make sure those classrooms are ready. But we just don't have the capacity to make sure that we can split our students into one single cohort. We'll have to split them in, put our students in one cohort, similar to what the high school might be able to do. We have to do it in two different cohorts, A and B.
So that does conclude this presentation. If there are any questions, we would be more than happy to answer them at this point.
Mrs. Chung has her hand raised.
I had a couple quick questions and then a couple longer ones. Sorry, I always do, I know. Okay, just to clarify, if we do go to 4 days at the high school, we're not going to change it to Monday to Thursday though, right? We're still keeping it at a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday?
Yes, in support of the middle school, because we do need that day to significantly clean our classrooms, do a little bit more of a deep cleaning.
Okay, and then can you speak to athletic and activities cohorts and how that might interact with any of the instructional stable cohorts they're looking at?
Yeah, it's my understanding it's the only way we could open a school, a high school in California right now, is that those cohorts operate under kind of different sets of parameters. So you can be in an athletic cohort and an athletic one. They do not want athletic cohorts to mix. It's suggested that they not be allowed to do that, but we can do that.
Okay, so there's no conflict. They can be two different cohorts that way. Okay, and then a couple questions was that I had that kind of relate to each other. Can you speak a little bit about the rationale behind the instructional schedule and how that might impact the quality of instruction that the students are receiving?
Well, I've always said any change is going to have an effect, and it's probably going to be negative at the start because you're asking somebody to basically take what they've done and now do it in a different way right away. So that's always going to come with a challenge. We're fortunate because the staffs that we have are uniquely positioned to be up to the challenge. They're smart, they work hard. They rely on each other, they collaborate, so they don't duplicate work, and they're willing to ask for help and accept it. So I'm confident they'll be able to rise to that challenge. The selection of going to what kind of looks like a block in the morning and then shorter periods or slightly shorter periods in the afternoon and at a distance is really about reducing the amount of crossover between stable groups, or whatever we want to call them right now, stable cohorts, you pick your terms. But if we have 6 periods a day, there's 6 interactions. There's also 6 times that a desk will be cleaned while the kid comes in and cleaned while the student goes out. So that reduces instructional time. So if we reduce the amount of switches each day, we feel like we're reducing the number of cleanings we need to do, which will also save us money. We are reducing the amount of passing back and forth between students and thereby protecting as many instructional minutes as we could.
And then my last question would just be, is there any additional assistance or supplies that you need, given that this is coming up quickly? And is there any way the community can help in that?
I think the biggest thing that we've asked for so far is we reached out to the PTSA at my school to ask for volunteers to hand out Chromebooks on the 30th and 31st. We're issuing every student in San Marino High School and Huntington Middle School who doesn't already have one a Chromebook for the purposes primarily of having a district device loaded with the appropriate software on my school to take AP exams, the CASP, the CAST, all of these things that we're required to do and that we want to supply for the kids. Not to mention it's now kind of the primary instructional tool. So they are helping us out by providing the needed support to hand that out on that day, because quite frankly, we'll be pretty busy preparing for students to come back. So we don't have a lot of staff to do that. So I think that's one of the biggest things. We have lots of PPE coming in. We ordered a thermometer for every teacher, one of those little trigger thermometers. We also got an additional no-touch scanner. So we'll have 3 scanning stations. What I would need from the community is a reminder every morning for your child to fill out their screener. A reminder every morning to keep your mask on, make sure that you are staying physically distant and doing everything that you're supposed to do to stay safe at school. It looks different now. So those are the big needs from my perspective. Mr. T?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I think that Mr. Kurtenbach touched upon is our instructional staff. I think the one thing that they would love to have is more time, but they continue to rise up to the challenge, and I know that they're tired and weary. So I think anything that we can do as a community to support our instructional staff, specifically our teachers as a whole, to encourage them. We've asked a lot of them. COVID has demanded a lot of our staff during these times, and they continually impress us, but they are continually getting to the end. And so here we are making another big change for these people to adjust their curriculum. So yes, as Mr. Kurtenbach shared, anytime that there's change and there's change in instruction, there might be a little bit of a negative input in this impact in the start. But I'm confident as we get going here in the remainder of weeks that we have ahead of us until we live in for May 27th, and that we're going to do well, and we're going to be doing an outstanding job with the people that we have on board. As far as for what this looks like for Huntington, specifically, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment as we work with our young people. This is an exciting time for a lot of our young people and time of their lives being in middle school, but it's all of newness. A lot of our 6th graders haven't been on campus yet. So I think one thing that I would need from the community is patience. As we get kids on campus, as Mr. Kurtenbach shared, the handheld thermometers, we'll have those at the classroom doors as kids walk in, and as we can encourage all of you as family members that are still listening at this hour, just to remind yourselves to set it on your Google Calendar, whatever your reminder, at 8 o'clock or 7:45 to do your COVID screener, so we can take care of that. Take care of business before you walk on campus. Those little simple things like that really help the flow of the day and will help us as we guide and direct the students once they walk on campus. Because once they're on campus, it's going to be a knockout of the ballpark day with our kids, and we're excited about them being there. And it's going to be great for their friends to see them on screen as well as in a classroom, those that have chosen distance learning. I think it's a win-win for both those that are on campus and those that'll be at home. And so I think those are the big pieces for us. And yes, also as Mr. Kurtenbach shared, some support and help would be definitely needed on those days for helping with Chromebooks. But I would think we probably would need to go through Dr. Choi on that, as far as making sure that we don't have too many hands touching those devices, but we have the proper hands that should be touching those devices to give them to our families. So that's on that part for Huntington Middle School.
Thank you. Oh, Mrs. Chanlin.
About choir and band, how will those classes be handled?
Actually, that's a really great question. There's some really cool masks that are out there. that go over the instruments. And so I had a really great conversation today with our music teacher, and she's all on board. And so we're going to be working on knowing which kids are coming and what masks and what type of masks that we need to get, what kind of covers. There are these cool covers that go over the wind instruments. We're looking at doing that outside so we can bless the community with the sounds of Huntington. So that'll happen in the morning. So if you want to be out in the back on Sherwood and you want to hear our sounds and hear our sounds, but we're going to be making those adjustments to make sure our kids are doing that. Choir will probably more likely be outside as well with their masks, or we're going to work something out within either in the gym in that large big space with the kids with their masks. But I'll be working with our choral director as well to make sure that our kids have the same opportunity that our band kids do. And our orchestra, obviously, they can pluck and string away, and they're going to do some great stuff too. But they can obviously be in the classroom.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Richter, Mr. Kurtenbach, and Mr. Topalian. Thank you so much for joining us and providing a reopening update for us. Next up, we have board superintendent discussion items.
There's still another presentation, Shelley.
Sorry, Mrs. Ryan, you have.
Oh, the 11D athletics, arts, and activities. Oh, so am I calling Dr. Richter back?
Yeah, real quickly, Dr. Richter, if it's going to take longer than 12 minutes, we'll probably need to make a motion to add time to the meeting.
It may take about 12 minutes.
All right,
we can probably get through it pretty quick.
We'll have you accelerate a little faster, and we'll do our best to get there, but I'll warn the board if we get close to 10:30 to add time.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, President Ryan. Thank you again. Thank you, Superintendent Wilson. So quickly, what I'd like to do for this presentation. So I'm going to ask our amazing principals to be brief, but to be thorough. I'd like to invite back Mr. Kurtenbach, Mr. T, I have a new name for you, Mr. Topalian, Dr. Lynn, and Miss Alana Foray to come back and share a little bit about the impact reductions in force may have on their schools, specifically with regards to academics, art, athletics, and any other activities. They have been really busy and very closely working at their school site, analyzing their programs, their activities to really minimize this impact. And I know they've also been working very closely with their staff. So I'd like to invite them back, and we're going to start with Dr. Lynn and Ms. Foray with Carver and Valentine Elementary.
Good evening, President Ryan and members of the board, Superintendent Wilson, and a great looking executive team at 10:15 at night. I just want to, Dr. Lynn and I we'd like to report to you about the reduction in force of our faculty and the impact on the 2021-22 school year. On March 12th, 18 faculty members were noticed at Carver and Valentine, 11 at Valentine and 7 at Carver. The reason for the difference is that there are more new hires at Valentine in the last couple of years. I'm going to talk about just the first couple of bullets there, and then Mike will cover the second two categories. In terms of academics, we will be losing 3 teachers at the upper grade level at each of our sites. And what this translates to is going from 8 teachers to 5 teachers. So 2.5 teachers at 4th grade and 2.5 teachers at 5th grade. And based on enrollment projections, we're looking at class sizes of about 40. We are also going to lose 2 physical education positions. Our physical education programs are beyond compare in any other public school. Our teachers have been here a nearly combined total of 50 years working with our kids. So their programs are really comprehensive and standards-based and spiraling from year to year. So children are growing in terms of their fitness capabilities. They're learning character education. You can see from the items here that the programs are really comprehensive. So this would be a devastating loss to our students. In addition, the teacher's prep time is something that is afforded by the PE period. And so that is something that will have to be addressed as we look ahead for next year. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, President Ryan, Dr. Wilson, and members of the governance team. Valentine and Carver share one certificated music position, and the music position delivers programs such as choir, the winter program, spring program, and weekly lessons for over 1,000 students in all elementary grade levels. The two elementary schools also share a full-time counselor who delivers programs such as social emotional learning and second step lessons. The counselor also conducts mandated threat assessments if there is knowledge of student self-harm. The counselor also coordinates site 504 plans, accommodations, and runs student success teams that implement response to instruction and intervention and positive behavioral interventions and supports. And that is it for me. Thanks.
Okay, for Huntington Middle School, first off, thank you again, Board President Ryan, board members, student board member. I think you should have permission soon to go to bed. I know you got school tomorrow, so I don't want to make it too quick, but just honoring that. And then our superintendent and our executive team. So for Huntington Middle School, it's huge. This is a big one. I spoke to this today to our PTA meeting, association meeting that was held for Huntington. And one of the big impacts for us right now is our morale. It's a big hit for us for such a great school and with great people. Been working really hard with Principal Kurtenbach over at the high school, just our articulation, our alignment with the high school. And then, I'm not going to go without saying that the beautiful work that the instructional staff and the leadership does at Carver and at Valentine that give us these great kids. And this impacts them as well, as Ms. Frey and as Dr. Lynn have shared. So we're truly caught in the middle in this mess. And being a middle school, it's hard for us because we get these great kids, and then we want to pass them on to the greatness and the great things of the work that the instructional staff does at the high school, and now their impacts. But it really impacts us on the work that we can do and the work that we can continue to do from the work that gets done at the two elementary sites. So how does it hit us? Well, it hits us hard. Hits us in some 5 impacted ways, but it hits a core at 11 areas for us with our certificated staff. 1 in our math department, 1 in our social studies department, 1 in science, a 0.6 in science. That's a science teacher that teaches 3 sections that really helps in the growth of our science department. Our 2 physical education teachers, which are huge for us. Our band teacher, and a 0.6 notice to our choir teacher who teaches our 3 sections at Huntington Middle School. That's a 30% loss in our instructional staff at Huntington. And that's huge for a staff of just close to 40. In the mid 30s, and then you take that hit for us. So also within this cuts, we lose our ELD program and our foreign language department for our Spanish. So there's 5 impacted areas that really come to us is teachers being reduced, and that's huge for us from 8 to 6. With multi-subject teaching credentials in our 6th grade, that's going to hurt us because our numbers are going to go up. And I know we've addressed that before in our last board meetings. Looking now, we're pressing from the mid 40s now to the high 30s to the high 20s to possibly the mid 30s for 6th grade. And I know that's a deciding factor for some of our families, and we don't want it to be. We have a great instructional staff at 6th grade. But at the same time, we also know that does change people's minds, but we want people to looking forward to coming to Huntington Middle School. We do know that our projected enrollment does show some enrollment numbers that could possibly decline. However, we do know those numbers might be right up for us into the 30s. So all in the core area for us, we're looking at a reduction of 1.0. That's a full-time employee for teaching 5 sections at the site in those core academic areas, which I shared earlier with math, social studies, English, and science. But I think physical education is just much as part of that core for us, and that's going to take a big hit. So if we look at our 7th and 8th grade with possibly 417 students returning, that's 41 students. in a class. We're going from 28 on a 28 to 1 on our average right now to 41. And in a middle school, now you're not just talking about classroom instruction, you're talking about just amazing classroom management that needs to happen. And so we just really need to look at classroom management versus instructional time. We're going to lose some of that instructional time. And as some of our teachers spoke earlier today in the board meeting about the quality of education that our students receive in the city of San Marino, we know that that's going to take a little bit of a ding. I totally believe in the quality of instruction, the quality of teachers that we have in our classrooms that are working with our kids on a daily basis. But here's another step, another thing that we're asking our teachers to do when they come back in the fall. And so I want us to be mindful of that as a community. Our visual performing arts, award-winning, as one of my teachers has shared who called in, that every time our kids go somewhere, they do great things and they come back with amazing trophies and plaques and recognition and awards. And so but just so you know, at Huntington Middle School, 60% of our students are involved in a VAPA program, visual and performing arts, be it from the fine arts in an art class to orchestra, to band, to choir. So that's huge. And not even to mention what our kids do in speech and debate and mock trial, which is outside of the bell schedule for our kids, who do an amazing job at Huntington. So we reduce all of our music to one teacher between Huntington Middle School and San Marino High School. That's a lot to ask in a tall order for an amazing individual, especially within our music department for band and for orchestra. We'll have one band teacher reduced, and that point section of that choir is reduced. So our art sections, also in our electives, the amazing art program that we have at Huntington Middle School, from painting and drawing to our art and our art intro. And as kids are able to do inspection for the electives, oftentimes for our students, that is the class in which those students for in special education, those are electives, that's their general education class. So it's something for us to be very mindful of. And then physical education, we're looking at our numbers going from the 40s, from the 80s now, from the high 40s. And so that's a quick shift. And a lot of students out on PE, and you're considering now when they change in 7th and 8th grade, changing the locker room time and managing that. That's again, a big tall order. And so we really need to visit that as well. And then as I touched being on our electives, as I alluded to earlier within VAPA, the reductions limit the selections of our VAPA programs and other courses that are so robust, including our foreign language. And then within that, we have to remove coding, we have to remove yearbook, and we have to remove Spanish. We can't do it, unfortunately, with the cuts that have come. So that's for Huntington Middle School.
May I pause the presentation there? I think it would be wise if we had a motion to extend the meeting 15 minutes.
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting for an additional 15 minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barbary. Thank you, Mrs. Chanlin.
I think you have to do a roll call, don't you, Shelley?
Yes. Mrs. Chung?
Aye.
Mrs. Chanlin?
Aye.
Mr. Chang?
Aye.
Mr. Barbary?
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan? Aye. Ms. Fahini Garamella?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. 15 minutes added.
I don't suppose I get all 15, right? I'm just
No.
kidding. Don't worry.
No.
I'm gonna be quick, but I don't think I need to explain anything that anyone is reading on the slide right here. It pretty much speaks for itself. I have every confidence, though, that this community is going to do everything that they can to make this a much simpler and easier situation for us. We're very concerned with our class sizes, but more than that, I'm really concerned about the morale of the students and the staff. These are not just teachers. They're people who have become part of our community. The 23 staff, even though they know that it is only going to be 18, creates a lot of fear and apprehension in those who are waiting, but they are banding together. Every single one of them have maintained a positive attitude, are working incredibly hard in their classrooms, and are putting in just as much time and effort as they ever have. They are committed to wanting to stay in San Marino, but there is the fear in my staff of they are beginning to feel that they have to look for positions. So I know that Mr. T, myself, Ms. Foray, and Dr. Lin have all been writing letters of recommendation with very heavy hearts for an amazing staff and a bunch of people who we all want to keep. So we will see increased class sizes. We will see some reduced course offerings. And we will see at least 4 programs fully eliminated. The Japanese program, yearbook, which will likely become a club, dance, a tradition at San Marino High School unlike no other, and then the Caltech STEM program. Both teachers who currently teach that and have only ever taught that course are both impacted by the notices. So we are doing what we can to backfill that and train and prepare. But it is quite a heavy lift because that is definitely the most unique class, I think, that most kids will ever encounter. But we're doing everything we can to prepare for the worst. But because we have faith in this community, we really are hoping for the best.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtenbach. Thank you, Mr. Topalian. Thank you, Dr. Richter. Are there any further questions or comment? Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Dr. Lin. Okay.
Well, my comment is scary, after 20 years, the first time I connect for the Caltech right now, I think it's Lucian.
Thank you. All right, with that, no other comments. Board superintendent discussion items.
Yeah, I just want to leave everybody with the thought that, that was a sobering report. I think we all just heard, right? I mean, as you listen to your principals, these are the individuals who have to work with their faculty, with their staff to really look at very, very difficult decisions around things that are very important to our community. These are human beings. They are wonderful human beings. It breaks my heart to even think of one of them leaving. And so, as we look ahead, it's time, folks, right? I mean, we've said this before. This is a pivot point in the history of this school district. This is a question of whether you believe there's a correlation between top schools and property values, right? This is a time when we look back through our history and understand the amazing traditions of this school district. I mean, for all my years of growing up in Glendora and working in Arcadia, I always thought of San Marino as this absolute gold standard of what public education should look like. And we can still do that. We can still have that. And we simply have to rally with each other, stop pointing fingers, stop breeding seeds of distrust and discord, and actually pull together as a community and say, we can do this. It's actually quite simple, okay? We just need to turn this around and we'll be back on our feet and we'll be rocking and rolling. And that's the message I want to leave everybody with. Let's get to work together. I'm in 24/7. I'm committed to it. My team is, and we'll make this happen. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. The board has elected to return to closed session. So I'm going to ask Dr. Choi to get us back to the right session to complete, to do some work.
Dr. Choi, do you
What item am I on?
direction on that? Should they use the same link as before?
Yes, let's go ahead and
Under
use the
closed
same link.
section, we are returning for 3D.
Okay, we'll go ahead and rejoin the same link for the non-public closed portion that we were in earlier today.
Can I just say one more thing? Because I said earlier that if we had time, but I think we're out of time, about public comments to reopen. And I encourage anybody who has comments to email the board.
And you don't actually, you can even send like a video message, you know, or like an audio message. You don't actually have to type it. So that's it.
Good night. Thanks to the public as well. Thank you all for staying so late.
Thank you.
Thanks.